Oh, I think we've started. Okay, I think we're live. We'll wait for people to go, hey! Tell us that you can see us, and then we'll start, guys.
I can see us.
What?
We got a hey.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, we're live. Let me turn my volume down on my live feed.
You made that mistake too, did you?
Yeah.
Got confused for a second
there. I'm hearing myself. I can't handle this. Okay, hang on. This is the usual live feeds where the first 2 minutes is complete utter chaos because no one knows what the hell's going on. Okay, I think we are finally here. We are finally live and we are finally sorted. Welcome, guys. It's good to see we've got so many of you guys waiting here. This is kind of clickbaity because I said we've got a special guest when it's probably his evil brother is not actually here. But welcome to the live feed. We've got plenty of things to talk about, and we are more than happy to talk about any topics that you guys want to bring up in there. So if there's anything that you guys want to talk about or got questions or so forth, chuck it in the comment section. Unfortunately, the comment section won't be nearly as funny as it normally is because we're missing a certain Kiwi old codger that normally is a real smart ass in the comments, but we thought we'd do one better and get him live on there. When he's a very hard guy to get, so be glad that we got him. Mr. Bruce XJet, RC model reviews, CAA enemy city council fighter extraordinaire, cape wearing, so forth. So welcome, Bruce, and it's good to have you on.
Well, thank you, Chad. I'm here to preserve law and order today, just make sure things don't get out of hand. And I'm representing CASA and CAA and the local council.
Can we ask you to expand your umbrella of crime fighting to the FAA and maybe EASA as well?
Yeah, and Transport Canada.
Yeah, Transport Canada, all the things. Awesome. Okay, so we'll get talking on to various. It's Time Cop. That's a good point. Someone said that's Time Cop.
It's me. I said that. Hi. You never introduced us. It's so rude.
So yes, on top.
Oh.
on top of Bruce, we've also got my my usual suspect in crime, Mark, sitting there with me. So Mark's going to help the talking going through as well. And over the maybe over time, we might get a couple of extra guys on here. I did put a post out to my Patreon subscribers and said, hey, if you want to actually be on here, you're more than welcome to. So we might get some of the Patreon guys that coming in through the time actually jumping on with us. So if anyone else jumps on, then you'll see who they are. But okay, let's start off with a little bit of history for people who don't know who this old balding white-haired guy is. Apart from Father Christmas, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little about the history, and I'm sure Mark and I might jump in from time to time we'll be fanboying you and so forth.
Yes, well, I'm 25 years old. I'm interested in the arts. I like red wine. I want to cure all known diseases and build box girder bridges. Do I qualify?
I would say yes.
Do you like long walks on the beach?
Long walks on the beach, exactly. What are you doing later, Mark? No.
Nothing.
I think most people know who I am. My notoriety has spread far and wide. But yeah, I've just been in this hobby for over 60 years now. I was only a wee little toddler when I built my first model airplane, and I've seen a lot of changes happen, some of them good, some of them not so good. And I've just basically tried to support the hobby and promote the hobby everywhere I can. I could have made a fortune, but I haven't, because I much prefer having fun to paying a lot of tax. So really that's about it. And I've had, unlike Chad, I've had run-ins with some of the regulators. In fact, every regulator I think that's ever been, I've had run-ins with, whether it's right from the local council through to the Central Aviation Regulatory Authority and the National Model Flying Body. I am so hard to get on with. I must be a really bad person. But hey, I had fun. That's all that matters.
I think
it's one of those things.
Chad,
Go for it, mate.
Chippy.
That's chipping. You don't get to talk. The talking chip. I think most people know you, Bruce, pretty well, but I don't think everyone will actually know like the origins of your XJet channel, for example.
Yeah, well,
the initial notoriety that you achieved online. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I had my XJet channel because I had a camera and I flew model aircraft, so I put stuff up for years, and it was just a hobby from about 2007 or 2009 or something, so a long time. And then when the 2.4 gig radio gear came along, I was looking at it because I've got a background in electronics and technology, and I looked at, was the Spectrum gear I looked at, and I thought, this is pretty crappy stuff. This is DSM-2, it's the old stuff. And so I made a few comments on how inadequate DSM-2 was as a protocol and how there were some bugs in it. And posted those to some of the popular online forums such as RC Universe, RC Groups and Flying Giants, and got banned immediately because Spectrum were a major sponsor of most of those sites online. And I thought, this is no good. You can't tell people, you can't shut them away from the facts. So that's when I thought, I'll just start RC model reviews and try and give people information without bias, prejudice or favour, and just call a spade a spade. And it wasn't set up to make money. But then YouTube decided that, hey, if you put ads on your videos, you can make money. So I thought, well, okay, that'll help buy gear and subsidize what I do. And then I don't know when it was, probably must have been 5 or 6 years ago, longer. I decided to go full time on YouTube and turn it into my career path. And of course, since then, it's all been downhill. What can I say?
A roller coaster, that's what they call it.
Yes, buy my swag. There'll be a list in the description of all the products I recommend through Banggood and my other affiliate links.
Yeah.
So you've taken the direction that most YouTube channels have taken, going downhill.
Yeah, well, YouTube is just a mess. It's just these people, they fix stuff that isn't broken, and in the process they break stuff that was working quite fine. It's just they just don't listen to anybody. And as I said to you guys earlier, I noticed recently, back probably 5 or 6 years ago when they introduced the channel partner scheme, I said, you need to set up the ability for channels to have subscriptions so that they can offer extra content for, say, $1 a month. If someone subscribes to that channel, I pay $1 a month, they get extra videos or they get early release. And YouTube said to me, no, we thank you for your comments, but it's not a direction we wish to follow. And that was fine. And then, of course, there was all the apocalypse stuff, and that Patreon came along, and now Patreon scoops huge amounts of money out of the YouTube community, which YouTube themselves obviously see they're missing out on. So they brought out this sponsorship thing, and for $4.95 a month, you could sponsor a channel, and the channel gets some of that money, and YouTube keeps some of it. And I had someone ask me the other day, are you going to put the sponsor thing on your thing so we can sponsor your channel? And I said, no way. I said, YouTube gets enough money out of me, and so many YouTube channels have been basically completely screwed by YouTube themselves by changing the rules and terms and conditions. Anyone who hitches their wagon solely to YouTube from the point of view of making a living is a complete and utter moron. I would much rather that people use Patreon, so that if I wake up one morning and YouTube has deleted all my channels, at least it gives me a month or two with my Patreon revenue to find another platform and carry on doing what I'm doing. But if you hitch all your horses to YouTube and YouTube changes the rules, you can be completely screwed overnight, as some channels have been.
Yeah.
Well,
like mine,
Patreon's
I can't monetize anymore. I'm only 2,000 hours. No, I got I think I'm about 2,400 hours a year.
Yeah.
So I can't make my $10 to $12 a year anymore.
How do you manage?
I sell my body, and it
must cost you a bit.
Gym memberships are the killer.
Yeah. It's all deductible, eh?
Yeah, that's true.
Patreon's is pretty much the only way that I actually make any money through anything I do, and my Patreon account is set up not just for videos, but for what I do in the community. I say, look, if you want to support what I do in the community, support me there, and that's nothing. It's kind of loose change. What that I look at the Patreon stuff is ways for me, like if I need to buy some ESCs or I need to buy some motors, or if I'm going somewhere and I need to get a taxi, that's what it pays for. It doesn't. It hardly covers at all what I'm trying to do. But I'm thankful for those people to support me. YouTube itself is absolutely useless. So
we know that there are manufacturers out there throwing product at you. In the room behind you are stacks, boxes and boxes of motors and ESCs and frames. We know that.
That's just for his eBay site.
You're just like Stewie, aren't you? Stewie from UAV Futures. He's got a whole wall made of mini quads.
Well, the funny thing is that used to be the case, but it stopped pretty quickly because they'd send it out to me. They go, "What do you think?" I go, "It's crap."
You should say that.
And they're like, "Well, when are you going to do a review on it?" And I'm going, "Do you really want me to do a review on it? Because it's not going to go well for you."
I've had the same thing.
There's people that would. Like, I'm well known for being a KISS pilot. I love flying KISS products. And you get all these Chinese places which are going, "We've got this new flight controller which we think you should fly." And I'm going, "Cool. Is it a Betaflight flight controller?" And they're going, "Yeah." So I don't fly Betaflight. They're going, "But you'll really like it." I'm going, "I don't fly Betaflight." "But you haven't tried it yet." And I'm going, "You don't understand. It flies Betaflight. I fly KISS." You're getting a flight controller which has all the same components on it as the last one that I flew, just in a slightly different order. Doesn't interest me. It's the same thing, just regurgitated. So yeah, I don't get stuff sent out to me anymore because they didn't like me being honest. Unfortunately,
I've had the same problems.
I looked at my YouTube channel. This was, I don't know, about a year ago. And I started the YouTube channel back in 2007 when I was putting up gliding videos. And all these people, you can go in and you can look at how much money this person has made and that sort of stuff. And people were putting figures saying, "Look how much money you've made. Don't tell us you're not making any money." So I went, hang on. That's looking at like theoretical, not taking into account like demonetization and copyrighted videos and that sort of stuff. And I use songs that I think would be good on there, and I don't care whether they're copyrighted or not. It just means if they're copyrighted, I can't make money off them. So I had to look on there. So from about 2017 backwards, I think I had made $480 total. I think more recently I'm up to like about $800 or $900, and I'm like, oh well, the money's in there. I may as well actually settle my bank account up and take the money out because it'd be good to have. But
I've got
that's
my
it.
ATO
I think
hat on now. My ATO hat.
Take it out in Bitcoin.
I live in Venezuela.
Yeah, I set mine up. I got like $50 once.
Yeah,
over from 8 years of YouTube revenue.
the most money I've ever made was one of my car park videos, and it wasn't throttle control. It was like a really crappy, like one of my least favorite car park videos. There was one of those viral video companies contacted me and said, "Hey, we'd like to buy the rights to your video." And it was a video that I didn't care. Like I didn't even like it. It was just like I put it up there and like, it wasn't one of my favorite ones. And they're like, "We'd like to buy it." And I'm like, really? So they bought it and they gave me like $200 for it or something like that. And then they were like, "You're also going to get a percentage of the ad revenue from our site." And I'm like, okay, cool. So for starters, the song is copyrighted, so I couldn't make money off it anyway. But they were sending me views from their version of my video. And I think I've made about like $400 off it, something like that. I'm sitting there going, every once in a while I get like $2 put in my bank account by these guys from the ad revenue on a monthly basis. And I'm like, well, this is different. So if you want to make money on YouTube, get some kind of viral video company to buy your video.
Affiliate channel something. Somebody approached me years ago, back when drone racing was a new hip underground thing. They used to get pinged every now and then on YouTube by these companies, and they're like, "Oh, you'd get lots of subscribers and make lots of money if you just jumped in with our channel amalgamation, whatever it is."
Correct.
Yeah.
They just steal your money and do nothing.
Yeah. Oh no, they add you to a mailing list and you keep getting fucking emails from them for the next 5 years, I found. But that was a freebie, I suppose. Yeah. And it wasn't even a channel that was anything to do with drones or technology. It was like GT something.
Gaming channel, usually the computer gaming channel.
It was cars. It was all about cars. Yeah. Like
it's a great cars.
Yeah, totally.
No, but if anyone wants to make money out of YouTube, they're mad. because you can't unless you're PewDiePie or you're willing to sell your soul to the devil and act like a 3-year-old in front of the camera. There's really no way to make a living out of YouTube anymore. I used to, but then they screwed it all up. So without my Patreon supporters, I would be flipping burgers at McDonald's.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting that way. I just don't. I prefer KFC to McDonald's personally.
But don't you get offers from like the Woman's Weekly, Chad? For these feature articles.
Oh yeah, all the time, all the time. Big thing. Yeah. For people who probably aren't are a bit more new to the hobby, but still know of Bruce. I remember back sort of 2013, 2014, if you had a mini quad that you had designed or something like that you wanted to get into the public eye and to go viral and everyone to buy, you would send it to RC Model Reviews, because if Bruce liked it, everyone would like it. And that's back in the early days of Blackout. I remember that. There were two places that you would send it to, either Bruce or Flight Test.
Yeah, I remember when I got there, because he sent me an email and said, I'm sending you something you might like. And I thought, okay, that was all he said. And then I got this box and I thought, what the hell's this? I hadn't seen a mini quad before. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll throw it together and see what it's like. And so I threw it together and took it out to the field, and I hadn't flown FPV multi-rotors much before. And I couldn't stop flying the damn thing. It was just so much fun. It just opened up a whole new door, because before that I had a Cine tank, which was like a big mini quad, they're about, huge things. And I'd seen some videos of guys flying these through forests and things. I thought, that's really cool. And then with the little 250 size, man, it just opened up doors, and I can see why people got so hooked, because I did. But it's like everything, like I go out there now and I probably 50-50 fixed wing and mini quads, because the change is as much fun as anything else. You go out there and you fly around for a while and think, I've had enough of this. You fly a fixed wing, and then you appreciate the benefits of both. I don't think I could ever be solely a multi-rotor flyer or solely fixed wing now. You've got to do both.
Yeah, totally agree. And you get bored of one or the other if you fly it too much. Like, I've got bored of FPV plenty of times and walked away from it to give it a bit of a break, because I think in the early days we were so hooked on it because the technology was evolving so rapidly and things were changing that you were all of a sudden you would get good at something, and then the technology would evolve to allow you to do something else, and you're always jumping up to the next step, where particularly more recently nothing has really evolved. And if you're flying every single day, you're like, oh, well, this is kind of boring. And I know I got burnt out, because I got to the point where I was flying in nearly every cool location in the world, and then you'd come back home and you're like, hey, do you want to go flying in the park? And like, dude, I've just been to friggin' Chernobyl.
But it was it becomes the social aspect when you get to that point. Like, I'll go to the park, I'll be ripping a few packs, but you don't really give a shit about the flying. You're just talking crap with your mates and having a laugh, and that's what it was always about in the early days for me. And we'd all be doing
that's what we did.
So you flew in Chernobyl, eh? Could you turn the lights out, Jed? Can we see if you glow?
He does. It's
sweet.
There's certain parts of me that glow, but I need to take my pants off to show you that.
Oh, the sun does shine from there, does it?
No. No, I've got a glow stick.
I see.
It's that final glide. It's that final glide lube, isn't it?
Yeah.
That glowing dark lube. Yeah.
You'll never be able to monetize this video, mate.
There are children watching.
Well, I started playing music in the background for my last live feed because Mark was complaining that there wasn't any music in the background, and it got demonetized. So thanks, Mark. Fuck you. I finally got to the point, you know what? I'm actually going to monetize my videos because that's what people do. I finally start doing that, and it demonetizes it. You bastard.
I'll tell you a demonetizing story, and I still get a hit every now and then. I did the live feeds for the last 2 Australian Drone Nationals on my channel, and the number of copyright hits, because everyone in the freestyle used their own music. So there's like 30 pilots or something from the first year and 15 from the second, and every single one of those was a copyright strike. And so it would process the video, and then I'd just get this wall of emails from YouTube going, you've been demonetized, and here are all the tracks. And then every now and then their algorithm would improve, and it'll find another one in there that someone's just been whistling in the background or something, and I'll get just this random email going, here's another copyright strike for you. And I'm like, what? I didn't even upload anything. And it was from video like 2 years ago. AC/DC were particularly aggressive. That shut the whole feed off for a while. The really big bands are the ones, they're the worst, like Pink Floyd, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin. If you put anything up by Led Zeppelin, it won't get demonetized. It'll just get blocked everywhere.
Yes, some of them have different arrangements with YouTube.
Yeah.
Some of them will just take part of the revenue or all the revenue. Others would make it take it down and things. It's kind of crazy. There's no such thing as fair use on YouTube. I've had videos. One of the worst things is I filmed some jets crashing, as you do. And one of the guys involved was not happy that I'd filmed his jet crashing. And I said, well, you shouldn't have crashed it. But his face was in the video. So he went to YouTube and said, I object, my face has been used without my permission. And I got an email from YouTube saying you must take the video down because you've got someone's face and they haven't given permission to have their face in there. So this is one of their terms and conditions. If you put someone's face on YouTube and you haven't got a sign off from them and they complain, you've got to take the video down. But fortunately, it was right at the end, so I was able to just chop it off using the YouTube editor without losing all the views and the comments that had gone on there up to then. But then they complained again that you could still see me in the distance because he was in the pilot box and I was about 200 meters away, and you could still see me. And so I said, stuff you can't recognize you. And they didn't uphold that one. So YouTube has got this crazy set of rules and regulations that are completely at odds with the rules of the land, laws of the land.
We're talking about fair use. That was like those live streams were 8 hours long, and it was like a 30-second to 1 minute block of background music, accompanying flying, and that's what they've, pinged. And they took the whole 8 hours down because of AC/DC for a while.
Because people are going to download that video and they're going to edit out the bits and they're going to listen to AC/DC with all the crowd noises and mini quads in the background. Yeah,
that's right. Exactly.
I would love a track like that.
Oh, it's so relaxing. It's the perfect marriage of sounds.
Absolute classic. Yeah. But hey, that's YouTube for you. So I guess what we're trying to say to everyone on the chat here, and by the way, we've got around 100 people there, so that means there's about 10, 15 people that are only interested in Bruce, because we've got about 15 people more than we had yesterday. So they're only here because of Bruce.
Nice work.
All my subscribers are here. Yay!
So what we're saying is get involved in the YouTube channel as quickly as you can, because life is great.
Yeah, exactly. You become rich and famous.
So
actually, the best thing about having a popular YouTube channel is I spend a lot of time looking at other people's videos, and sometimes I'll see a video. I especially like watching videos of people flying at a club and something and having a bit of fun, and I'll leave a comment saying, on the video, and I get this, oh my God, XJet commented on my on It's like I'm the queen or something, It's like, really? It's only me.
It's weird, the whole semi-celebrity status we have in this hobby. It's so odd. But I remember commenting on some of Juzz's videos back in the early days when I was just starting to fly, and he was inspiring me, and he'd reply and say, thanks, that's a nice comment, and I'll be all like, oh, Juzz replied to my comment. Yeah.
I remember once, late at night, I was bored on YouTube. Sometimes when you just randomly search and go through recommended videos and just to go off in this sort of tangent, looking at strange things.
Rabbit holes.
I found myself watching videos of large ships losing anchors. So they're letting the anchor down, and the brake fails, and then the chain breaks, and it disappears, and you've got like 200 tons worth of anchor disappearing. There's sparks and there's smoke and lots of stuff. And after about an hour, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm watching anchors disappearing. So on that particular video, I wrote on a comment going, I can't believe I've wasted an hour of my life watching an anchor disappear. And about 5 minutes later, I get a reply to that. Final Glide Oz, is that you? Are you stuck here too? There's all these other people going, we're stuck here as well.
Let us out.
It's funny though, because so many of us watch the same channels without realizing, like Ave, we're talking before about Ave. Just that everybody I know that watches my channel also watches Ave. It's a common thing for some reason.
Yeah.
Personalities attract each other. Slow-mo guys are always popular with me, but they're super popular now anyway. They're all celebrities. So they should do a slow-mo mini quad crashing together video. That would be epic.
Didn't Tom do one? Didn't Daniel from X-Hubber do something like that? He did quite a few slow-mos of some of his frames crashing into stuff. Looked quite good.
That would do. It'd be fun. Get him to Australia.
Yeah.
We'll show him about snakes and shit.
So, Bruce, I'm sure no one's heard about the issues that you've had to deal with when it comes to the Waikato City Council and the so why don't you fill us in on a bit of a history on your endeavours with the wonderful government population of your part of the world?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate place to live. That these are mainly old people who have retired or been retired and know nothing, but believe they know perfect bureaucrats. But the big problem we've got is that it's I don't know. They don't have any understanding of anything. And I've been trying to promote the town. I try to promote the hobby and also try and promote the town in which I live. And I went to one of these councillors one day and said, "Why don't you want me promoting this town?" And he turned around at me and said, "Well, the reality is there's no point in people coming here. We've only got a few motels and they're crap, so they won't stay." And I'm thinking, well, okay, that's nice. I said, "Did you tell the moteliers that?" He said, "I'm not going to tell them that." But it's like this whole parochial, they don't give a damn. They've just spent $600,000 on a new skate park here. The old skate park, when you drove past, there were like, maximum I ever saw were like 6 kids there. So they spent $600,000 making a new skate park. And I went down yesterday, there's a few there, but within a couple of weeks, it'll be empty like the last one was. And I've tried to get them to do stuff because I wanted to do drone, training here, just give people the basics, to go through some basics and show them how to use it. Because in a few years' time, being able to fly a drone, there won't be that many jobs for drone pilots per se, but people who are doing things like, you might be a builder and you're doing roofing work, to be able to fly a drone is going to be useful. It's like a driver's license. It's another bullet point on your CV. And I wanted to give anyone that wanted it, those bullet points to improve their opportunities. And the council actually forbid me from doing that. We all know these drones. And you probably saw the video where I went and spoke about the fact that drones are not as dangerous as dogs. We let people walk their dogs in the parks and everything.
Yeah.
And the councillor said to me, "Do you have a dog? Do you have a dog? Do you have a dog? What would you know about dogs? You don't have a dog." And I didn't think quick enough. I would have said, "Well, here you are. You don't have a drone, and you're making rules about drones." But they're just you just can't deal with them. And I don't tolerate idiots very well, I'm afraid. And the place is loaded with them. And also they're dishonest. I mean, the mayor, probably saw the video where the mayor drew a drone prize and she was, "Oh yes, drones are wonderful. Looking forward to having people flying them in the parks." Then she turns around and basically bans them because I'd been flying a drone in the park. But she'd given permission to fly drones in the park. But suddenly she changed her mind. And I just pull my hair out. I don't have time for bureaucrats because generally speaking, they don't know anything and they're just trying to pass rules. Desk pilots, like CAA and CASA, these people are just, yeah.
The Gold Coast Council over here was quite interesting. So for 2 years in a row, we had the Australian Drone Nationals. Particularly the first year, we had the Gold Coast Council, which was on the news, sitting there going, "We have got the Australian Nationals here, and we are so forward and progressive." This is a city council where if you fly any kind of remote control aircraft, including drones, you get an on-the-spot $370 fine.
Yeah.
Anywhere within the Gold Coast. So you can't even practice.
They weren't interested in reviewing their laws. And then when they discovered that we were going to have it where we had it and not at their celebrity location, which was like the Turf Club or something, then the mayor who said he was going to come out didn't even show up, like drive 10 minutes down the road to come to this national thing that was getting all this media attention. Gold Coast City Council have been a great disappointment. Like, we're really lucky in Brisbane that the Brisbane City Council are a bit more progressive. And actually a lot of the technologies come out of Brisbane. We have loads and loads of parks and loads of people were flying in them early on. Sydney, I was surprised, but didn't actually have much of a quad community for quite a while. Melbourne had a big scene and Brisbane had a big scene. And it's all helped by the councils being on board. I think we're living on borrowed time, to be honest, in Brisbane, but I'm enjoying the parks while I still have access to them.
The big problem we've got here in New Zealand is there's no continuity. You can go to one town, you can fly in the parks, no problem. Go to the next town, it's banned. And used to be that the councils had no jurisdiction over flying over parks because the airspace was managed by CAA. So we had bylaws in this town. You may not take off or land a model aircraft from the park. That's fine. You just stand outside the park and fly over it. That's quite legal. But what CAA here in New Zealand did, they wanted to lead the world with the regulations. So they decided they would delegate control of the airspace for the purpose of flying drones to property owners. So now if you want to fly anywhere in the country, you've got to get permission of the property owner the owner of the property over which you're flying. And it's lunacy. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. It means that every tourist that comes to New Zealand with a drone is going to break the regulations because they go out, they're driving down the South Island, look at that lovely view. They get out, get the Phantom out. In order to fly legally, they've got to find out who owns this piece of tussock land in the middle of nowhere. Then they've got to go and apply for permission to fly over it. Otherwise, they're breaking the rules. And then CAA is going, oh, we're not getting compliance with their regulations. Well, it's because people can't comply. It's just too bloody difficult. And I said to them, you know, if you make it easy or make it necessary to break one rule, then people are going to be far less inclined to follow the rest of them. Hung for a sheep as a lamb. So you've got to make your rules able to be complied with, or don't be stupid enough to suggest them. I mean, here in New Zealand, if you have a 7-year-old child wants to fly their little toy, you know, quadcopter that they bought for $49 from the local department store, if they want to fly that thing in the middle of a grassy paddock, miles from anywhere, they have to know what category of airspace that is. And they have to understand airspace categories, and they have to get permission of the property owner. I mean, seriously? Why are we? Yeah, it's like, we're not going to have young kids. Used to be when I was a kid, model aircraft was seen as a wonderful lead-in to a career in aviation. Perhaps, you know, kids were encouraged to build model aircraft, and we used to take our free flight down the school and fly them in the schoolyard, pick them out of the trees. We used to fly control line in the middle of the park, you know, with people walking by and babies and prams. And these days, of course, you'd be hung, drawn, and quartered for anything like that. But what's going to happen to kids is some countries, they're actually putting a 16-year-old, you know, a minimum age of 16 years to fly a drone. And what's wrong with kids? Why are they being criminalized? Because they want to be kids and have play with their toys. Absolutely lunacy. But this is why I don't get on well with bureaucrats.
Yeah, look at this terrible, threatening thing. You know, it's.
You got a license for that?
In the world, nah, I'm gonna fly it anyway.
It would be understandable if we were having issues with safety, with people being hurt, with people being killed, like realistic issues, or people's privacy being having an issue with that. But when it things like privacy, we've already got privacy rules of which it's already covered. It's already illegal to go into people's private lives. Doesn't matter what you do, it's still already illegal. So the only thing that's left about that is the safety issue and the simple fact that we have been around since FPV has been around since 2007, and drones have been around for a similar amount of time. And the simple fact that we now have more drone flights per day than full-scale aircraft every single day around the world, and the fact that we still haven't had any fatalities. We still haven't had any life-threatening injuries. And the type of injuries that we have had have been minor and far and few between, shows something about it and states that we are actually the safest form of aviation out there. But
Absolutely.
we've had like remote control fixed wing aircraft have had fatalities. Remote control 3D helicopters have had fatalities. Even remote control gliders have had fatalities.
What amazes me most is in the USA, you can learn you can have an ultralight like a Quicksilver, and you fly no registration, no license, nothing. But if you build a model of it and it weighs more than 250 grams, you got to register to fly the bloody thing. I mean, seriously, you're making a toy, you're claiming a toy is more dangerous than the actual man carrying vehicle. What's going on?
Well, the perfect example of that is Peter Schriepel.
Yeah,
he built an aircraft out of model aircraft parts out of foam. So he basically built an oversized flight test aircraft, which in a lot of areas you could have said was kind of shoddy, and some of his techniques were kind of shoddy, and it was all completely legal.
Yeah, didn't have to register that, maybe.
It's extremely retarded, and I will always stand by the point. It doesn't matter what I'm doing with it, so long as I am, let's say I'm not going above tree height. so long as I'm not going and annoying people that are not a part of my group, so as long as I'm around my friends, flying, have consent, understand the situation, understand the gravity of it, who fucking cares what I do? So if I'm out there flying in a field with Mark and I fly directly into his face, if he didn't want that, then
as you've done before, probably by the look of it.
Oh, I'm wearing the beauty of FPV is we're wearing eye protection at all times. So,
Speaking of bureaucrats, and here in New Zealand, we've got one good thing, which is our shielded operation. If you are flying below the level of the trees and there's a barrier between you and an airfield, you can fly right up to the boundary of the airfield. The concept being you're not a threat to manned aviation if you're below the tree height. It's sensible. I praise CAA for that. But then if you're flying FPV, you've still got to have a spotter. And I said, why? Because I asked the guy from CA, why would I need a spotter? You've already said that this is safe because there's not going to be any aircraft here, right? Why do I need a spotter? And he said, because you never know when a helicopter might encounter problems and have to do an auto rotation into that area. I'm thinking, can you draw a longer bow?
I think it's got bigger problems than your little mini quad if it's having to bloody
exactly. Yeah, that's the problem.
You'd hear it anyway, so for God's sake, I know.
That's the thing that annoys me. You know, Chad, they spoke to you about situational awareness with your mini quad. I had this argument with CAA in New Zealand as well, because I said, why do I need a spotter when I'm flying FPV? And they said, you have a lack of situational awareness. I said, I have much more situational awareness than the pilot of that 172 out there on the runway. And they said, well, how do you work that out? I said, when he's in that 172 at 1,500 feet, he cannot hear any other aircraft, because that engine's sitting right in front of him screaming its guts out. If he looks down, all he sees is floor. If he looks up, all he sees is wing. If he looks up to the right and left, all he sees is wing. If he looks at the back, he's got this tiny little area to look through. He has virtually no situational awareness other than what's out in front of him through that tiny windscreen. I said, by contrast, if I'm flying a mini quad within a reasonable distance, I can hear any aircraft coming. I've got the best picture in the house from up in that mini quad. I've got a camera that I can pivot around, as Chad said, you can do a 360 really quick. I can see everything that's going on, much better than someone standing next to me who's limited by their own line of sight. So tell me again why I need a observer. And the answer was, because we say so. That's the rule.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yes, Mr. Bureaucrat.
Yeah, and you cite example of all the beyond visual line of sight flights that have been done. Look on YouTube, there are so many BVLOS flights that have been done around the world by model flyers. And there was an interesting guy that I met up with probably, I don't know, maybe 8-9 years ago here in New Zealand. He was a Russian, he was a programmer. He lived here in New Zealand, he was on contract. And he would fly 25K beyond visual line of sight with this, what was the equivalent of the Bixler, the multiplex Sky Surfer or whatever it is. Anyway, had one of those that had 1.2 gig video gear and he had long range UHF. And he would be regularly flying 25K and back down riverbeds and things. And he had never had any incidents, and he had so many backup systems. He had his goggles, and then he had a little DVR, and then he had a separate LCD screen. So he had 3 levels of backup on the video, and he did it really well. And I look at all those cases, there must have been many, many thousands of BVLOS flights around the world by model flyers. I've never heard of one instance of any of those flights causing an injury, an accident, or property damage. And all that period of time. Yet when some UK company does a BVLOS flight for the first time, it's world first. Look at this, we did it. We flew it and it was safe. No one was killed, or hardly anyone was killed very much. And they're making it sound like it's such a difficult thing. But the regulators are saying, oh, you can't fly beyond visual line of sight without all these spotters and all this bloody extra stuff. Well, excuse me, how the hell would you know? How many BVLOS flights have you had? Why don't you talk to the community who's been doing this safely for over a decade and find out what the real risk profile is and where the real dangers are, instead of just reading a book and making stuff up while you're eating your donuts and drinking your coffee. That's the problem we've got. These people are so out of touch with reality. And I find that annoying, because I don't mind rules that serve a purpose. But when you make up rules just to prove that, because we can and we're the regulator, that just doesn't gel with me. That's counterproductive. Because you get people thinking, oh, I'm following the rules, I must be safe, which is quite often bullshit. You can do a lot of harm by following the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't teach the principles because they don't know the principles. They just don't realize that situational awareness in an FPV, especially a mini quad, can be much greater than in a 172. Look, good example, how many mid-air collisions have we had between manned aircraft in the last decade? And compare that to the number of collisions between manned aircraft and drones. Well, obviously something's different, and it's the drone. You've got more situational awareness than the bloody 172. There's, if you've got a low-wing aircraft, you get hit from below. If you've got a high-wing aircraft, you hit something as you're climbing. It's all over the place. And then, of course, when you do have those collisions, the planes fall onto suburban areas and people get killed on the ground. If a drone falls out of the sky, you might get a cut on your head. A mini quad, it's not going to kill anybody. But they don't do the risk calculations.
The other problem with situational awareness, too, is it's only situational awareness if you are actually being aware. Now, my biggest problem when you talk about general aviation, your Cessnas and so forth, and this is a problem that I've had as a glider pilot when I've been flying. Glider pilots, we're taught to look at a lot because we fly very in close proximity to other aircraft. And anytime I did any instruction with a powered aircraft coming over to gliding, they freaked out at the fact that we flew closely to other aircraft, because the powered guys shit themselves. If they're closer than 2 kilometers to another aircraft, you can see the sweat starting to bead and all that sort of stuff. But and this is not everyone, but generally with your powered aviation, if you're in a Cessna, what you're doing is you're getting up and you're going somewhere. So you do the beeline, you go straight to the point that where you're going to go. You get to your desired altitude, the space or whatever, and you hold that altitude. What are you doing? You're watching the altimeter, you're watching your airspeed, you're watching oil pressure, and generally speaking, most powered pilots are not looking out. They're looking at where they're going and they're looking at their instruments. They're not doing this. They're not looking at stuff coming from the side of them. And it's just a trait of that type of flying. And I've noticed there's a big difference between, say, the gliding community and the powered community, where it's all straight ahead looking at the instruments, straight ahead looking at the instruments, straight ahead looking at the instruments. And that's not situational awareness. So even if you could look behind you, if you're not looking behind you, then it's totally useless anyway. So situational awareness is only useful if you use it. And when the people that these organizations like CASA and CAA are trying to protect don't even do the lookout, then what's the point of it?
So do these C-172s have rear vision mirrors?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They get to see their gas tank.
Do they have wing mirrors?
Well, the gliding tugs do.
Yeah. Actually, interesting you should bring up gliding, because when I started flying radio control models, I flew a lot of gliders, slope soarers and thermal soarers. And today, one of my most favorite aspects of the hobbies is DLG. And it's interesting to note, I found that people that have only ever flown powered models are usually not as good pilots as people that have flown gliders, or a lot of gliders. Flying a glider tends to give you a much greater appreciation for the theory of flight and how stuff works, than just hooking, grabbing something that's got a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio and just pointing it somewhere. Oh, look, Isn't that lovely?
From what I've seen of
my favorite Blaster 3. I would totally agree with what you're saying there, Bruce. And this is certainly going for the full scale aspect of side of things, and it also filters down to the RC stuff as well. When you learn to fly powered aircraft, you learn systems and checklists and things like that. And here are your instruments, trust your instruments don't lie, all that kind of thing, where in gliding, you're taught, forget your instruments. Instruments can get set wrong, they can break, they can lie, you can misread them. Forget all that. Use your senses. So what you can feel, what you can see, what you can hear. So, and we learn what's called attitude flying, which a lot of powered aircraft pilots don't learn to use. And if you remember, there was that Air France crash where the pitot tube got frozen over, and they flew a perfectly good aircraft and crashed it into the ocean. The whole world aviation body started suggesting to commercial pilots, go out there and actually learn to fly gliders, because it'll teach you to fly attitude flying. So they go 2 different ways. So when you fly powered aircraft, you learn systems, you learn how to understand that and overcome systems and things like that, where gliding is very much a back to basics. It's flying the aircraft. And I found the same thing. Generally speaking, glider pilots are better pilots because they know how to actually fly the aircraft. And the same can be said for RC stuff. And it's very interesting too, that here in Australia, if you want to get into the Air Force, the first thing the Air Force says to young kids who want to get in the Air Force, they say is join a gliding club and learn to fly a glider. That's actually officially what they say, because they actually have a lot of, my gliding club alone has had three Air Force pilots come out of that, and one of them was Jeff Brown, which was the chief of the Air Force back in, I think 2011 to 2014, and our Air Force has recognized the importance of what you gain from learning to fly a glider, and it's good to see. So yeah, I totally agree with where you're coming from there.
Yeah, Speaking of, you're talking about the impression of the hobby and the media. Did you see the story here in New Zealand and Queenstown? They had a fireworks exhibition, and they had to call it off until there was a drone that was interfering with the radio control system on the fireworks, apparently. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you've got 100 kilos of high explosives using a radio system that can't tolerate one FPV transmitter or transmitter, assumably, and that's acceptable under regulations. Yet, you know, look at the difference. It's like the risk profiles are massively different. And I'm wondering, a couple of papers covered it actually, about this drone interfered with the fireworks display, and they had to find the drone pilot and lock them up so they didn't interfere anymore. And the story was quite interesting because it was supposedly about the fireworks display, but one of the newspapers added this to the story about drone interferes with fireworks display. There have been growing concerns about privacy and safety as drone usage increases. Drones have been used to spy on people both in public and through windows in their own homes, and it can be difficult or even impossible to identify the operator. Improper drone use in restricted areas like airports have delayed and even rerouted planes approaching Auckland International Airport more than once. One man was convicted on 3 charges of breaching controlled airspace in 2016 when he used his drone to record scrub fires. Nothing to do with the story, but a good chance to put the boot in because it's a drone to bring up all this, which is completely
it's a typical media beat up, isn't it?
The media is vilifying drones because everyone loves a bad news story and something that's dangerous and public's privacy is at stake. We really, as a community, need to get on top of this and get right behind it. Every time there's one of these stories, there should be a body that issues a countering press release and says, we challenge the statements of this authority, whatever, and because otherwise people believe what they read. The perception is reality. People think every drone they see is trying to take photos of them, and they need to rush home and switch into their togs and lay in the backyard.
Well, we were
the big problem is that we've got our community is too busy fighting over which is the best ESC and wants to kill one another. Okay, the likelihood of them getting together and acting as one. Yeah.
Remember the first media things that we did, Chad, when Channel 7 got in touch with us, and we were actually really worried about it because we weren't sure. Up until then, every single media story had taken that tact, like the all scary drones, evil, spying, blah blah blah, going to kill your children. So we were just flying in this car park, and they were going to come out and do a story. And I even went to the extent where I had like several cameras recording the entire evening. Just in case they edited it up to make us look really bad so that we could release something going.
Now, I hope you blocked off the entrances and exits to that car park as a safety measure.
Well, of course we did, but CASA didn't believe us when they threatened Chad on the phone afterwards. It was only enclosed on one side out of 4, and it's on the approach to Amberley airfield. So, if a Cessna had to land in that car park while we were flying, things could have gotten really bad.
That's what I find interesting here in New Zealand. We have this 2-tier thing. CAA, where we're trying to dodge a bullet because they did previously, before they changed their rules, they said, if you fly commercially, you've got to have a commercial operating authority. If you're a commercial operator, you need to get the special thing, and there wasn't many, it was expensive. And then because I said to them, well, that's stupid. I said, so you're telling me if I go to a mate's place and he's got a farm and I fly around his farm and have a good time and I don't financially benefit from it, it's perfectly safe. But if in a year's time he decides to sell the farm and I sell him some of the video for $50, I've retrospectively engaged in a far more risky operation.
Yeah.
And so they tried to dodge that bullet by saying you can fly commercially under Part 101. There's no difference between commercial and non-commercial operation. And this is why they brought in that property permission thing, because if you have a Part 102, which is a commercial authority now, then you can fly over people's property without their permission. So it means you can do commercial stuff. You can fly over a piece of land without worrying about it. So they've introduced this property permission thing just to try and avoid considering whether something's commercial or non-commercial. And in doing so, they've just created a complete dog's breakfast of regulation. And to get your commercial operating authority, you have to submit exposés on safety. So you've got to come up with every possible risk factor there might be and your mitigation strategy for it. So the crazy thing is people who want their commercial operation thing, they go out and they hire someone to write this exposé. So they pay like $2,000 or $3,000. Someone writes all these big lists of things and they just pass it on to CAA. They may never have even read it themselves, but apparently it makes them a safer pilot that they paid someone to do this. And then initially there was no practical test. You didn't have to prove you could fly a damn drone, just that you could do the paperwork. And I said to them, you wouldn't let a private pilot take off without proving his ability to fly. And so now they've introduced the need to have a signed off. But all the way along, the CIA have created rules, and I've come up and said, you can't do that. They've modified things, but why wasn't someone thinking in the first place? Obviously, no one who knows what they're doing has been involved in the process. So it's only when someone comes along and says you've stuffed it up that they make a change. They're reactive, not proactive.
Yeah, it's always just bureaucrats, and they get told by somebody higher up, oh, you need to write some laws about blah. And so they just go and do a very minimal amount of Googling and make some stuff up, and that's when we have our regulations. Nobody engages with anyone that's actually in the hobby. I mean, we've been trying to engage with the regulators for years and years and years and years. It has been
absolutely.
Times.
Then they in New Zealand,
in
New Zealand they did a survey. They invited people to partake of the survey, which was a general survey. Anyone could comment on it. So I promoted it through my channel, and they got, surprisingly, it was much more than the UK got for their survey anyway. So they got the survey, all the data there, and it didn't really align with what they wanted. So now they hired someone else to do a different survey of mainly industry professionals. And whenever there's a news story and they're quoting figures, they always quote the survey, which got the information that they wanted. And the one that was the actual real honest survey has basically been completely dismissed because it didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. And it's typical with bureaucrats. They you know, if you don't tell them what they want to hear, they're not listening. And that's crap. And, you know, Chad mentioned that you had the CASA people come down to see you. They flew 2 states to come and see you after your videos went up. I had the same situation with CIA. And for people that don't know, I flew a little mini quad under some trees in a park here. And it was, in theory, because it was in Fort Cavan Airfield, it was against the regulations. And so CIA sent 2 investigators to come and talk to me. And they rolled up and I said, I know why you're here. We had a bit of a chat. And they admitted to me that actually what you did wasn't against the regulations. And I said, well, what are you doing here? And they said, well, we got told to come. So it's as much about the person who was in charge at that stage was also tied up with the National Model Flying Body, and it was all a case of personalities. You know, I pissed off someone in the National Model Flying Body, so they got their mate at CAA to send these investigators down. And I'm thinking, why are we paying taxes for this? You know, let's deal with the facts, not with the fact that someone's got their nose out of joint. You can't allow that to be part of the whole regulatory and enforcement process. But I mean, they wasted how much money? Just like with Chad. To what effect? Absolutely no effect, because I put the video back. They said take the video down, so I did for a couple of months, put it back up. It's still there.
Yeah. Well, I fixed them with Chad's video. People are asking for chicken sandwich now. I might have to upload my copy of that.
Yeah, well, you've got all those copies, so do as you want. I'm not going to stop you.
Well, you can't. That's the reality of it. You can't play whack-a-mole on the internet with bloody takedowns. It doesn't work. The internet responds. And,
well, it's the funny thing I find that I don't think a lot of people realize is they go, well, you got a problem with not being able to fly FPV, get your commercial license. This is where I inform people that it's illegal to fly FPV with your commercial license unless you have a beyond visual line of sight certification, which, by the way, basically no one can get. There are only a very small number of companies that can get it. It's a very involved process. So even as a commercial pilot, it's all line of sight.
It's because there's not enough babies in the entire world to survive a BV lost flight.
Exactly. You can get 2 different kinds. You can get beyond visual line of sight and extended visual line of sight, where you have like a spotter on a radio down where you are telling you what to do, and that makes it so much fucking better.
At least CIA in New Zealand have a different attitude to what constitutes line of sight. Last time I spoke to them, their definition of line of sight was that you could still see the area where the model was flying sufficiently to avoid a collision with a manned aircraft if it entered that airspace. So you don't actually have to see the model, but you have to know where it is and see if there's a potential risk entering that area, which is more common sense, really.
Yeah.
The whole CASA thing is essentially, they've worded it so no FPV. That's the way that they want it, because essentially what CASA wants is they want FPV pilots to be at the model aircraft fields with the MAAA flying, doing circuits with everyone else, which anyone who is involved in the hobby knows that will, first of all, is boring as shit. No one will ever do it, and we're not welcome there.
And it's too dangerous. There's all these old people crashing into the bloody pits all the time with their bloody Super 60s and nitro motors and crap.
Exactly. But I mean, so what they've done is they've essentially made FPV illegal, but then put in given the MAAA special special certification. So, it's okay with them.
Yeah. Well, that's what they do in the UK, really, with this new flight order, isn't it? Which is basically you can fly only a flight to 400 feet, unless you're an BMFA member, and they get special exemptions. I don't like that because it's handing power over to people. That's what basically happened in New Zealand with Model Flying New Zealand. They were the only organisation that could issue wings, which was a certification required to legally fly within 4 kilometres of an airfield. And that is open to abuse, and it was abused. I mean, it was, the wrong people getting their nose out of joint. They basically never in the history of the hobby had anyone had their wings removed, but they pulled my wings because I pissed them off. And the interesting thing is that this wings thing, what is wings? It's a certification. Now, if you go to a company here in New Zealand that can issue wings, you can get your wings, you pay your money, that's it. They're wings for life. But if you get exactly the same certification from Model Flying New Zealand, it's only valid for the term of your membership. So what is wings? I mean, it's like going to university and getting a degree in science and then having to pay them a stipend every year to maintain that degree's validity. You don't do that. Either you've proven you know something and you have a certain level of competence, or you haven't. So you can't have two sets of rules. This is just completely wrong.
Yeah, for the MAAA, you've got your gold wings, which enables you to fly by yourself without someone flying a drone. You can fly sort of independently.
No buddy box.
At the club. Yeah, no buddy box required. And I just found it funny that there was these instructors at these model clubs that were handing out gold wings that couldn't even perform the gold wing task themselves.
It's the same here. Yeah, you didn't have to be able to fly a helicopter to test someone for the helicopter wings and things. But it's even crazier here because they have an advanced wing system now, which means if you've just got your normal wings, you can fly at a field and all sorts of things. But if you've got advanced wings, you can fly at public displays. Now, there was a guy sitting his advanced wings at the airfield with a model, and I was filming him, and he complained that he didn't want to be filmed because it made him nervous. And he's sitting at qualification that lets him fly at a public display. If he's the kind of guy that a camera makes him, how the hell could you let him fly at a public display?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't like me at public displays anyway, because I remember at Tingalpa Model Aircraft Club, they had their air show. I'm the kind of person where they say, you can't go there. That's the first place that I go.
Yeah. I think we both got in trouble that day.
Yeah, the first year that I was there, they had their little miniature city with skyscrapers and windows and stuff that they were going to blow up with their pyrotechnics display and sort of stuff. And they said, just make sure you don't fly anywhere near the city because it's dangerous. And so, of course, I took off and they walked straight over to me because I was a celebrity. I had my goggles on, and they thrust a microphone in front of my face and said, so what are you doing now? I said, I'm flying over to this little micro city that they told me not to fly through, and I proceeded to fly through the windows and stuff, and they didn't like that.
That was a fun day.
Yeah. I was about to say, so what other things can we bitch about CASA and CAA and FAA and lots of stuff?
It's all a bit tedious now, isn't it, I think?
Yeah. So tell me, Chad, your flying style seems to be quite a bit different to other people. I noticed you fly a quad more like a fixed wing. How does that work?
What I do is I actually
very good.
connect it to my DLG.
Yeah.
So it's because I have to, because the wings won't let me go in strange directions.
He actually flies in Ratitude mode. Nobody really knows, but
angle mode, eh?
Yeah. The one that lets you do a flip, but it's sort of auto. Yeah.
Anyone in the comments, give us a hell yeah if you remember Ratitude mode days.
Ratitude mode.
That's CC3D, isn't it?
That's open toilet. Yep.
Yeah. What was it? That was Horizon mode on the nays.
Basically, yeah.
It was great. Everyone used to fly that, but I found out very quickly that it's no good for racing because you come barreling into a corner, crank it over, and suddenly you've done a flip because it gets past that point where it's, the stick's actually. Yeah, that was just wicked. So I had to learn to fly right.
When I got into it, everyone was flying either angle or horizon or Ratitude, and this included Mark, and everyone was telling me, no, acro mode is like, it's not the way to go. And I'm sitting there going, it was so limiting, and I copped so much crap early in the days. It took me, you were actually quite a while to convert over, Mark.
Yeah, no, well, it was interesting. What happened was I started to convert over to manual mode with my big rig on the NASA, and I was soaring around with that. But then when we got the mini quads, and even Sean from Impulse, you know, he agreed with me. It's like, oh, these mini quads, no, they're way too fast and twitchy for rate mode. No, we have to fly these in angle. So we all flew them in angle for ages. And I used to have I never liked Horizon because it was a bloody fence sitter mode. It was neither one or the other. So I used to actually manually flick into acro, do a flip, and then flip back into ADDI mode.
Hardcore.
Yeah. And then eventually it just clicked with us all bit by bit one day. I think it was the day I got my big Thumbrellas, because I was still thumb flying at the time, and I got these giant big Thumbrella paddles for my sticks, and it just felt like I had so much more control, and I switched over to rate mode, and it just all clicked in my head that day. And after that, of course, you can't go back. But it was funny because we were still flying rate mode on the big birds, but they weren't doing any proximity stuff. They weren't flying through little tree gaps or anything. Sean used to fly his disco under things in the really early days. He used to do incredibly retarded things with his gigantic quad and somehow not destroy it. There's something about flying a big quad. I mean, I've got that 9-inch Alien going now, and just flying a big quad again, you really do want to sort of just cruise. It's just cruising. It's like cruising in a big V8 rather than flying a go-kart, I suppose. Different sort of flying.
That's mostly the flying I do now. I mean, I'm crap at freestyle and crap at racing, so I just like proximity and trying to maintain a constant speed and just swooping and making it as fluid as you can.
It's always been lines and smoothness for me. I mean, you were talking about Chad's flying style, and I think he cruises a lot more, but I think it's location dependent. And one of the things that's always shit me is when you've got a really good pilot and they're flying in an amazing location, but all they can do is show off what an amazing pilot they are. So they're doing flip, 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 roll, 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 you know, look at me, I'm doing a yaw spin and inverse, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just watching these videos going, I just want to see the scenery, you know? And that was why, like, a video like removing oneself from the equation is really nice, because you're showing off the location, and there's a few flip-flops in there as well to make it, you know, it's an FPV video. But yeah, I'll always focus on the location first. And when I'm flying something like that, I just love a cruise. And then you can do a few little clever things once you've established, you know.
If you're going to do a whole heap of tricks and so forth, you may as well stay at the park.
Yeah, do it in the park.
You can't focus on the location. What's the point in flying halfway across the world to this epic location if you can't see the location? All you're doing is just seeing flip, 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 flip.
Yeah.
I think I've got burnout. I mean, I watched a lot of the flyers I used to watch, and now just doing such tight and rapid succession, bang, bang, bang of flips and rolls and stuff. And it's like you've seen one of those, you've seen them all. It's like you don't want to see that anymore. You want to see stuff that's why I like Chad's videos, because it's just a different style. You know, it's just not like constantly flipping and rolling and stuff. And you do have time to admire the scenery. And when I watch Chad fly, it seems to be more bank and yank than pivot, and it does stand out that, and it makes for I don't feel so sick if I'm watching those videos.
I'm a fixed wing pilot. I don't know what rudder does.
Funny you should say that, actually, because I know so many fixed wing pilots who fly mode 2, because Chad and I fly mode 1, of course, but the mode 2 flyers who think the left hand stick is solely for use on the ground. You know, like it's the throttle switch and it's for taxiing.
Well, yeah, if you're a fixed wing pilot, that is almost true.
Well, I don't know. I still use a lot of rudder when I'm flying fixed wing, especially something like if you're flying a scale model or a high wing model. They tend to drop their tails on the turns. If you bank and yank, you've got to push a bit of rudder in to keep a coordinated turn going. I don't know I've never flown a full-size glider, but do you need much coordinated rudder turns for your glider flights?
Every time you roll, every time they just think of the aileron as connected to the rudder, but the amount of rudder that you put in really depends on the situation. But if you're using aileron, then you're using rudder pretty much every single time. So you're doing a coordinated turn, and it also depends on the glider as well. So if you get into like a more modern day 15-meter glider, it's very, very well coordinated, so you don't need much rudder, and it rolls very, very easily. But if you go into like a big like Nimbus or something like that, a 27-meter glider, that requires like full rudder. So normally, say, like for example, a small 15-meter glider, what you do is if you want to roll, you give full aileron and then enough rudder so that you get rid of the adverse yaw. But in an open class glider, a big wing glider, there's so much adverse yaw there that you give full rudder and enough aileron so that you can hold that steady. So the rudder is the determining fact. And there's sometimes there where you get into the older gliders, something like say Nimbus 2 or some of the older gliders to even that, you actually need to kick in with opposite rudder. Sorry, you kick in, with opposite aileron. So the adverse yaw is so bad that what you do is if you want to roll right, you give a jab of full left aileron to get the nose to start going around, then follow with full right and full rudder. And sometimes you need to lead in with the rudder as well. So it really depends on the aircraft. They all can get quite a bit technical, but the newer style of aircraft are actually a lot easier to fly, as you would expect.
Yeah,
but it's the anytime that I've done instruction of powered aircraft pilots coming over to gliding, the first thing I say to them, I go, okay, this is the rudder. It actually does something. You actually have to use it. You could use it more than just crosswind landings and taxiing. And you just sit there and you watch them, and you watch the yaw string going left and right as they're getting the shits. And the most demeaning thing when people are learning to fly is they're sitting there trying to get the coordination right, and they're watching the yaw string go left, right, left, right. And you say, take your hands off the controls. They take their hands off the controls, and all of a sudden the yaw string goes straight and doesn't move. And they're like, going, yep, that's you doing that.
Yeah, one thing I hate about wings, actually, going back to flying wings, is you don't have a rudder, and you really miss it when you're flying low and trying to go through gaps and things with a wing, trying to fly proximity. The lack of a rudder is like, whoa, what's going on here? Every time I go back to a wing, I get really bloody pissed off that I can't yaw the damn thing.
Yeah, and you also get annoyed with all that sort of that yaw, that wobbling that you get with the wing as well.
Wiggle. Well, that's why when I decided to get a plane this year, because I've never flown fixed wing, I got a proper plane. I got a Nano Talon rather than a wing, because everyone said, get a wing, learn to fly on a wing. And I'm like, nah, I want a rudder. And so my flight, my plane is now in 65 pieces, but the flight
you fixed the wing?
About
is it a fixed 25
wing? Seconds. It needs to be glued back together.
Yeah, that's what they call fixed wings.
Yeah, it will be a fixed wing eventually. Now it's a broken wing.
Mark found out the hard way that fixed wing flying has its own inherent challenges.
Well, I knew that it would,
but there's also
the person that launched it. My battery wasn't properly secured, and so the battery flew backwards inside, and so it was super tail heavy, and I just porpoised my way around until I flew out of FPV range, and then just had to ditch it. Luckily, we got it back.
I really like flying fixed wing FPV proximity though, because you can't, if the gap's not big enough, you can't stop. You've got to think really fast. It's great. And unfortunately, one of the best flying sites we had was a kind of a reserve with lots of trees, just widely spaced enough you could fly fixed wing FPV proximity. And we lost that because here in New Zealand, when they built the new model flying rules in, the CAA rules, they also a few years later brought in some health and safety rules. So now if someone comes onto your property and hurts themselves, you can be criminally liable for that injury. You can't contract out of it because it's a criminal liability. So for activities that take place on your property, you have to have a safety plan. You have to have identify the risks, mitigation strategies, blah, 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 blah. So we were flying in this reserve quite happily. Then they brought the new health and safety rules, and I got a call from the people that own the reserve. They said, oh, we can't let you fly there anymore. I said, why? Have you had some complaints? They said, no. It's just that our lawyers have advised us that we have to have a safety plan for every activity that takes place there, and we can't afford to do that. So we're only going to allow dog walking and temporary parking of camper vans. And that's it. FPV out the window, which is a pain in the ass. It's just bureaucrats again stomping down on things they know nothing about.
Yeah, and it's like the Department of Fund Reduction, workplace health and stupidity, which is it's not actually mitigating any risks at all. They haven't examined what risks are there in the first place. I mean, walking dogs could potentially be more risky than flying planes, I would think. Nobody ever gets bitten by dogs, do they?
No, actually, that's one of my favourite stats, and I present it to the council every year in New Zealand. 13,000 people get bitten by dogs. Yet I can walk my dog in this park out here, but I'm not allowed to fly a drone.
We've come full circle, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's so frustrating when something like that happens, and you can't really fault the people that own the reserve because they can't afford to be liable if something does happen. But the reality is no one's going to get hurt. If someone gets hurt, they're not going to sue you. We're not America. People are just generally quite reasonable and realistic. You know, yeah, it's just frustrating because the only people that win in these things are the lawyers, and society gets a little bit less fun, and the world gets a little bit less colourful as a result. So let's go and do what we want to do anyway, I suppose.
When I win the lottery, I'll buy myself 20, 30 acres, and I shall declare it a republic and issue a no-fly diktat for over the airspace, and anyone can come and do whatever the hell they like.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll come.
All right, I'm just reading the comments here. If you guys have got any specific questions, or while Bruce is here, feel free to go and ask, or any topics.
Because we've been rambling for an hour, more than an hour.
Yeah, I know. We've been doing well rambling.
So, Chad, what's your number one tip? What's your number one tip for drone flying this week?
Number one tip for drone flying: fly safe. Fuck the regulations.
And be good to your mother.
Yeah. No, I always say that, and I it's one of those the fun police that you see out there, not just the bureaucrats, the fun police that are out there that want to dob in videos and that sort of stuff. That say, well, you're flying illegally, so you must be dangerous and that sort of stuff. I don't think anyone here is saying, yes, we should fly dangerous. So if there's a guy flying at high speed through a crowded street of people or something like that, or trying to run into an aircraft, sure, that they need to have it all fucking sent to them. But if they're doing something that they have the risk mitigation in a practical sense sorted out, and they're not hurting anyone, particularly if they're right out in the middle of fucking nowhere, I don't care if you find it dangerous. It has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with anyone. But I think that's the important thing, that no one here is saying, no regulation and nothing needs to be. No one needs to get in trouble. People can do whatever they want. I mean, if you watch any of Bruce's stuff, he's make sure that he's very critical of people doing stupid things, and I think the issue is that when it comes down to safety, everyone's opinion on safety is a little bit different. I think that's where the issue really comes down to it, and particularly if you watch a YouTube video of someone doing something, a lot of the times you don't see the probably what's happened in the background leading up to that, and you might assume that it's dangerous. But I mean, if you're flying near people, very close proximity to people, high speed, and these people haven't been told, and they don't have they haven't given their consent and so forth, then sure, they shouldn't be doing that. But as I said in my last live feed, there is a very big difference between regulation and safety. They are two different things, and they should never be treated as the same things. Regulation is there to help enforce safety, but it doesn't mean that it is safety. It doesn't mean that it's safe. I'm sure you'd probably agree with that comment, Bruce.
Absolutely right. It's interesting. There's a guy, CAA have what they call area safety officers. Now, these are guys that have feet on the ground. They talk to people who fly. They are the face of CAA to most aviators. And there's one drops in to see me every 6 weeks or so, and he's the guy. And I chat with him, and he's such a pragmatic, such a sensible guy. He agrees with everything that we would have said here, and he has this, speak softly but carry a big stick approach. And he was saying that he saw some guys flying a drone inappropriately. He went and had a quiet word with them and said, look, this is a situation, and that solved the problem, right? Didn't threaten them with prosecution and stuff. Just said, look, you realize what you're doing is actually against the law, and you could be prosecuted. But I, really rather that you stop now. He's a really straight up guy, and like with my DLG, for instance, I'm not allowed, because we have this 0 gram weight limit now. You can't fly anything. I said, if I'm flying my DLG in the park and I go above the tree height and it's 2 kilometers from the airfield, I said, what are really the risks of that? What if a 172 comes along and hits this DLG? What's going to happen? And he said, yeah, it's going to destroy your DLG. He said, probably won't do much to the 172. I said, so why is it illegal? He goes, I don't know, he says. And I put a whole lot of scenarios. I said, you know, if you were me, what would you do? And he said, I'd do exactly what you're doing. And that's the kind of thing. I've got respect for that guy because he understands, and he is just the practical. I have no respect for the people that sit on a desk and without any knowledge or experience make up rules, which are basically saying, we know more about what you're doing than you do. Even though you've been doing this for 60 years and we've never done it, we're going to tell you what's safe and what's not. And they come up with such crap-ass regulations that people have no respect for the regulations, and therefore they have no respect for the people who made them. And what the key thing to compliance is respect. If people don't respect something, they won't comply. They don't seem to have, they should have someone who has behavioral psychology as a major on the team there, but they don't, obviously. And this guy was saying most of the people that work in CAA are ex-Air Force. They're used to working in a very regimented, disciplined environment, and they expect everybody else to be the same. But we're the skateboarders of the 21st century. Most people who fly mini quads, they don't give a damn about, you know, some ex-Air Force guy telling them what to do. They'll just do what they want to do. Unless you get the respect of those people, you're not going to have any control over them. And that's where the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, there's no compliance. It's pointless.
Well, when the lady came to talk to me from CASA, I think they sent the lady because maybe the lady is going to be less...
she might have requested it. She might think you're a bit of a man there, Chad.
Like less threatening and so forth. And, yeah. But it was funny because it all started, and when I got my father came with me, and I sort of said, look, don't, I've had experience with this. Don't get suckered into the friendly bullshit, because they're going to try that. They're going to try that. And they did that for the first half an hour. It was all just like a friendly talk. And then all of a sudden, when it came to talking about questions, the desk light came over and they were put in your face and asking all these official questions and all that sort of stuff. And you could see the tone change. And as we were driving back, my father said, holy shit, you were right. I noticed it changed. I said, I told you. They try the whole, we're your friend and we're here to help you, but don't you fucking do that again. Otherwise we'll spank you good and all that sort of stuff. But the funny thing that they tried on me was the whole, you need to be more careful because you're a role model and you need to do the right things as a role model. And I basically said, fuck off with your role model shit. How about you put the responsibility on the individual to make their decision, to make to do the right thing in life, and take the responsibility off people like me and put it on the people who actually have to make these decisions. And they're going, yes, but we understand that, like, you're a really good pilot and you can do things that other pilots can't even dream of, and they don't realize this. I'm going, fuck off with that crap. Don't give me that shit where you're trying to fucking, but you need to be a good role model. No, I'm not playing your fucking game. And they're like, but people are going to see your video and think that they can do that as well. And I'm going,
and
okay, cool.
Crash and they'll be broken.
Yeah. It was a deserted island. If they want to go and fly on a deserted island and crash, then they can do it. They're not going to hurt anyone.
They can meet Pete the Ranger and his shotgun.
But I just love it. They had this whole, you need to be a good role model and so forth, blah, 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 blah. So you know what my reaction to being a good role model was? Getting on fucking YouTube live channels and social media and saying, as a role model, I suggest you all continue doing what the fuck you're doing.
It's interesting, when CA came as investigated me, they also sent a woman down. It must be part of they may think women have a better, rapport with people. But yeah, they said, but I didn't. You were saying, never admit anything. Well, I admitted. I said, I did it. Because the way I look at things is, if I'm sure of my position, I would be quite happy to front up in a court of law and argue my case. And I know that if they've got really bad regulation that they cannot justify from a safety perspective, the courts will look at that and they may challenge those regulations. And the last thing a regulator wants is the court saying, your regulations suck, go back and do it again. Because if they bring in a case and it doesn't get upheld in the court of law, it opens the door for everybody to do that. So they are very cautious about what they take to court. They won't do it unless they're absolutely certain. And as CAA in New Zealand said, and I think CASA said, we won't prosecute solely on video evidence, because they know that they'll lose in court. And then the door's open for every man and his dog to do the same thing.
Yeah.
That's why I like you, Bruce. Yeah. You're older and you give less of a shit. I've found it. As the older you get, the less of a shit people actually give about this stuff. It's like, fine, take me to court. I don't care anymore. What are you going to do? Lock me up for the last boring 20 years of my life anyway? old people become such troublemakers.
Called being
Look at your
cantankerous,
dad.
man.
Yeah, look at your dad, Chad.
Yeah,
Should get him on the live stream once. I want to see how you two interact on live stream. That'd be
no, because
hilarious.
it'll be 2 hours of me saying, "Shut up, Dad."
You can mute him too.
Like my father now has got to the age now where he's kind of like the guys were back in the 80s before the internet, where they would just write letters to everyone to tell them how upset they were with. My dad's like that, but he's got the wonders of the internet to allow him to get the letters out quicker and to a wider audience.
I love the way it used to be solicitors' letters were like, oh my God, I've got a solicitor's letter. Oh, I'm in trouble now. That's sort of gone by the by. I publish a daily blog, which I have done for nearly 25 years, before blogging was a thing. And I've been threatened with defamation suits by so many people, members of parliament and everything. I remember one MP sent me, his solicitor sent me a letter saying, you have defamed my client and we demand an immediate retraction. And I wrote back saying, thank you for your kind letter, get stuffed. And bring it on. Never heard another thing. But I mean, it's like, I know that my parents, if they got a solicitor's letter, they'd be, oh my God, we're in trouble. But just a letter from a solicitor, who gives a damn? And when I had a problem with someone who had defamed me, one of the council staff actually defamed me because people write from around the world saying, why won't you let Mr. Simpson fly at the airfield? And he said, Mr. Simpson has repeatedly broken civil aviation regulations. And I hadn't. So I went to a lawyer and said, look, what's the guts? And the lawyer said, yeah, you've definitely been defamed. You would win a case against them. They said, but it'd be very expensive and the damages you win probably wouldn't cover the legal bill. They said, but if you give us $1,500, we'll send them a letter. And I said, get stuff, $1,500. It'll be a solicitor's letter. I said, seriously, you guys don't have, think yourself important, don't you? Because I'm not going to feed the sharks. Last thing I'm ever going to do is feed sharks. If I have to appear in court, I'll represent myself. I mean, God, lawyers, they've got it made, haven't they? They never lose.
You know the old joke, what do you call 1,500 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start.
Well, the good thing about
Chad.
She's a non-practicing barrister. It's a good way to get free legal advice.
Yep.
Someone asked Bruce, where can we find your blog?
It's at aardvark.co.nz. Or if you're in America, aardvark.co.nz.
Z.
It's an important difference. And if you're in Canada, you don't care anywho.
We were asking about pro tips earlier. Here's my pro tip for the week. See this? This is a tiny GPS. Now, you notice the top doesn't look like they normally look like?
That's scrape the silver off the patch, man.
That's what happens when you use electrical tape to attach it to something and then peel the electrical tape off.
Oh, no.
That's the hard way. So
just get yourself a graphite pencil and rub it on again with a graphite pencil.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
I tried with a piece of copper, but it no. You got to tune these things. There's a bit more black magic in them, I think, than just a bit of copper tape or some solder beading around.
What are you talking about? You just tuned it then. It's fully tuned now.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I'll plug it in. We'll see if we get a fix.
Give us a C on it. C sharp.
Yeah.
Come on.
So now you're going to pick up all the American military satellites, so it's going to be even more accurate.
Oh, sweet. Oh, I can't plug it in. Sorry, the USB port's used for my microphone.
Isn't it one of those Banggood GPSs? All it keeps sending out is saying, you are here, you are here, you are here.
Yeah. Return to China. It is one of those Banggood BN180 GPSs.
Don't be so tight. They're only about 20 cents.
They're $15.
But that's what, 3,400 New Zealand pesos.
That's right. So I've already ordered another one, of course. But that's my pro tip. Kids, be careful with your antennas.
That's always what makes me feel good about myself here in Australia. When I start thinking about how expensive things are and so forth when I buy stuff from America because of our exchange rate, it always just makes me feel better because I know that New Zealand is a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, you were over parity with the US dollar for a while, eh? You were worth more than the US dollar.
That was when I got into FPV, actually. Those were heady days. And I was buying stuff from the States because you couldn't get anything locally. And I was like, oh, wow, this is affordable. And then sort of 6 months later, there goes the neighborhood.
And what's happening with GST on imports now in Australia? They're introducing it, changing the threshold. It used to be $1,000, didn't it?
Yeah, it was $1,000. So effectively unenforceable as well, because you just, you know, they only open 1 in every 100 things that you get through customs anyway, and all the lovely Chinese guys love to declare them as being worth $2.50 US.
Yeah.
And worth $400.
Are they changing it in Australia though? Aren't you getting a lower threshold or something? Or?
I don't know what's happened. They talk about changing it for years, but they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, here in New Zealand, they want to do the same thing. They want to make everything. They expect that Banggood and AliExpress will charge GST for the New Zealand government and then remit it back to New Zealand for free, no extra, and make themselves uncompetitive at the same time.
Banggood,
I mean, the politicians, they do not have a clue. It's called the Amazon tax. They're going to put that on. Amazon replied by saying, okay, if you're going to make us collect tax for you, we simply won't ship to New Zealand.
Yeah, Amazon have changed in Australia already, but all those like Alibaba and Banggood and stuff, all those Chinese, they're not going to bother with any of this stuff. They're just going to keep shipping stuff and we'll just keep buying it.
I will say you guys better be glad that you don't live in America. Whenever I'm over in LA, I've got to keep myself off Amazon because that place is insanely tempting. It's got absolutely everything, and they will deliver within, like, what is it, 48 hours, including on the weekends. And I remember I bought
and
my
by drone.
I bought
they deliver by drone.
Yeah, they'll do that soon.
Drones are delivered by van.
I remember I bought a MacBook when I was in the middle of the Ohio winter. It was all sleet and snow, and there was a big snowstorm. So I went and bought a MacBook on a Friday night, and on a Sunday, this Amazon van turns up and delivers this computer. And the guy gets out of the van, and you could tell he was pissed off. He's like, "Why the fuck did you make me drive through all this shit?" And I'm sitting here in a nice warm house going, "Thank you."
Oh,
Okay.
How fast is your internet over there?
Long range. Chad's is shit.
Yeah.
Chad's is like ADSL and he gets like 600 kilobits up or something horrible like that. I've got cable and it's a bit better, but it's still pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm stuck on 100 megabit fiber. It's crap.
Oh, you poor bastard.
It's giving us more of a reason to come and visit you, Bruce.
I remember Paul Bitmata posted a thing where he first got his NBN and he's like, look how fast this is. And then everyone was like posting their things. And I was about to post my one from work, which was like 250 megabit, which was quite decent. And then David Vinderstall just posted his from Sweden, which was like 1 gigabit. And we went, yeah, you win.
We can get 1 gig here, but there's no real value in it for YouTube stuff. But even at the hangar, I've got 4G, and it gives me 40 megabits down and about 26 megabits up, which is quite good. And I pay $52 a month for 120 gigabytes
on 4G.
My favorite one is I've got a screenshot from when I was in Switzerland and I visited CERN, their big supercomputer there for the Large Hadron Collider.
Did you dive it?
And they want me to dive down the 100 meter tunnel into the Hadron Collider the next time it's open for inspection.
That was one of my. I've had like 3 or 4 moments when I've been intensely jealous of your adventures, Chad. And when you got to fly at CERN, that was one of them. That and Chernobyl and the Great Wall, I think. But
I took a picture of the computer that's talking about all the stats, and it said the number of running jobs was 345,318 jobs running at one time. Active CPU cores, 543,045 active CPU cores. A transfer rate of 10.97 gigabits per second.
Those Raspberry Pis are great, eh?
Yeah. Can stack them.
But it's kind of weird. When I was flying, they actually wanted me to fly through the whole data center of the supercomputer. So you got all these things stacked up everywhere. And I'm flying FPV through this to record for them. And they're just going, just be careful that, so you can imagine flying around computers and electronic noise everywhere. You're not 100% certain that you're not going to lose radio control or FPV feed. There's all kinds of weird shit going on. And they said, just be careful that you don't run into certain areas, because if you take out any of those cables, you will actually disconnect us from the rest of the servers around the world. I'm like, oh, this is fun.
And there's a geek in the corner trying to overclock his PC to 5.8 gigs.
Now that would cause some interference, wouldn't it?
Where are we? There needs to be consequences for those who make regulations claiming safety but don't solve an existing problem.
Yeah, it's called promotion.
That's politicians for you. Unfortunately, politicians look out for themselves and those people that are paying their pockets.
This is the problem with regulation. It's driven by political overlords who are driven by public opinion, which is driven by the media.
Yeah.
We can always vote them out, can't we? Except for the fact that my vote never seems to work.
Well, it's just frying pan and fire situation, isn't it? Because the other crowd know better.
Yeah, that's right.
We need Trump.
Make Australia great again.
Yeah, build a wall, an FPV wall.
We've got our Trump. Yeah. He's that crazy guy, Clive Palmer. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got. Well, we did have a female Trump there for a while.
What about Pauline Hanson? She flies drones illegally.
Yeah. Oh,
Pauline Hanson. She was thrown in jail. That's what I really like about Australia as a whole. If we get
Australia a whole
that are, yes, definitely. if we have politicians that are too crazy, we throw them in jail.
Do we?
Yeah, they sent Pauline Hanson to jail.
They just get a knighthood here.
Yeah. I still want to do a guerrilla run and dive the flagpole at Parliament House. Do you reckon that'll get us thrown in jail?
I keep on telling you that you'd want to have really long range stuff to be able to do that, and you can do that on your own. They would take that rather seriously.
They would treat it as a terrorist attack, and you'd be locked up forever, mate.
Until they looked at me, and then they'd be like, "Oh, he's just a bloody hippie."
Yeah,
they're the worst.
Guess what? Guess what, guys? We've managed to get Trump conversation going on in the comments. So
good stuff.
So okay, so all of you Americans out there that love your politics, fight! We'll
honestly, Pauline versus Trump. I want to see that go in the comments.
So where's the best place you've ever flown, Chad?
Pine cones.
That's kind of a hard one because I mean, there's amazing places that I've flown, but I've enjoyed them for actually being there, not necessarily the FPV side of things. So, like, I really like the top one for me was definitely going to Chernobyl and visiting there. That was totally amazing. But I think the experience of just being there was just as important as actually flying there. So, Great Wall of China as well is another one. I guess the FPV aspect enabled me to see it from a different point of view that you normally wouldn't. And that definitely rings true for Chernobyl, like in Pripyat, the town itself, because when you're there, the forest has taken over the city. And this is a city of 50,000 people, so it's a decent sized city. And there's like 20-story apartment complexes in there, but you can't see any of it because the forest has taken over. So you have to really sort of look really deeply through the forest, and you see a housing complex and you see a building. So what it essentially looks like is it looks like some sort of like farmhouse here, there, in amongst the forest. But the moment that we all took off, each one of the pilots, when we took off, we all lost it one after the other, because when you finally got above the tree line, you got to see the size of the city for the first time. And it really sort of sent a shiver down your spine as to just how big it was, and finally gave you a perception of the size of the town and the scope of the disaster. And that's probably what I remember the most about the FPV in that. And I think that's why I enjoyed flying there. It wasn't because, oh man, look at that cool sort of like place that we can, like bandos and shit. Like they bore me to tears. I don't care, but somewhere that's truly beautiful, that you would find beautiful even without a drone, or some of the places, the more memorable places. It's just that the drone allows you to see it from a different perspective than you would not normally have been able to see.
That would have been amazing, just getting up above the trees and then just seeing the layout of the town and realizing where you were, like getting the context. It's completely different from the air. And that's, it sort of ties back to, actually what we were talking about before, and just cruising and showing off a location when you're flying. It's important for me when I'm in places. I've never been there anywhere quite as amazing as that, but when I'm in a lovely place, I'm flying not to make a video to show off to everyone. I'm flying because I want to see. I want to fly. I'm FPVing. I'm a bird, and I can be jumping off this lookout and flying down some massive valley somewhere in the bush or around a major Australian landmark or wherever the hell it happens to be. And it's just amazing, even through the goggles in low definition, you know. So you've got to stop and look around sometimes and remember why we're doing what we're doing.
I think you're right, because sometimes I'm sitting here and it's the middle of winter and it's cold and it's dark. And if I'm watching a video, you know, where someone is just cruising through proximity, beautiful scenery, it's like, you know, takes you out of where you are. It's just like being there flying yourself. It's fantastic to have that ability. And it's, it's changed a lot of the way you look at the world. It's amazing. It's certainly when you live in a country like New Zealand where winter lasts 9 months, where we are, it's so nice to be able to share the rest of the world or enjoy the rest of the world vicariously through the links, through the videos.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite surprised. I'm surprised that there hasn't been more people that have flown, that have put out videos from New Zealand, especially the South Island, where you've got these amazing mountain ranges that just come out of nowhere.
Crazy, the glaciers and everything like that, and the whole
it's the regulations again. That's the problem. You can't fly over them without permission. And we have DOC, which manages much of the publicly owned, the national parks and things. And these people are crazy. There's no consistent policy. Some places you have to pay $200 per flight if you want to fly a drone over the tussock land that's there, because I don't know, you might kill an ant or something. And then other places you're not allowed to fly at all. And it's just, and then of course you have the problem because a lot of the land is owned by Maori, and then you've got to find out which tribe and which authority and whatever to get the permissions and things. And I looked at, there's a place just down the road here called Hooker Falls at Lake Taupo, and I thought, there's a lot of videos coming from Hooker Falls, people flying drones there. I wonder what the situation is legally. It took me 4 weeks to find out who actually had the authority to give permission to fly a drone over those falls. And then the only way you can get permission is to apply through a website and pay money, which is not refundable whether you get permission or not. And I'm thinking, what? This is absolutely ridiculous. Whereas the videos of people flying over those falls are a huge selling point. Someone goes online, let's go to New Zealand. Look at these lovely videos. We go there.
Yeah.
You know,
I've been to those falls. They're nice.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got a good question for you. Like, so you've got all these stupid regulations, and people seem to actually care about it in New Zealand because you guys are all nice. But like, if you just went and flew in these places anyway, so if some ratbag Australians came over to the South Island, we're like, hey, this is that place out of Lord of the Rings. That's pretty fucking epic. Let's go for a long range cruise through this valley and stuff and put it out there. Like, is it like Australia where like the actual locals who are on the ground really won't care and they'll think it's cool as well? Or are the people going to like just, you get the fun police straight away? Like, obviously a major landmark is different, but I'm talking about wilderness areas and things. And I'm sure you're not supposed to fly, but if some ratbag tourists came over and flew, what are they going to do, you know?
Well, there's millions of tourists come here every year and fly, and the CAA has made, I think, 3 prosecutions in the entire, since the new rules came in. They don't have the enforcement capabilities, and the great thing about tourists is by the time they put down their coffee and stop eating the donuts, you've already left the country. So it's not that much of a big deal. What I was thinking in terms of, you know, you can't put videos up on your YouTube channel because Kaz will come and give you the hard time. Maybe it's time for someone to set up a channel where those videos that you don't want to put on your own channel can be sent. And so someone will put them up, say, I just received this SD card. Let's see what's on it. Oh,
we've been talking about this for months.
Yeah, then you can monetize it, and the money can go back to the person who sent you the footage. And then, you know, it means that because the other thing is, if we show the world that we're doing all these things that are illegal, but it's safe, then that puts the spotlight back on the regulator. Why are you stopping this? Because obviously no one's being hurt. Where are the injuries? Where are the accidents? Where's the property damage? These rules are overbearing. Like in America, where they'll come out with that report that says that the regulatory framework in America is actually compromising the growth of the industry, and things are being over-regulated because they're treating every location as if it's downtown New York City, and it's not good enough. So it's good that someone's had a review of that and basically thrown the ball back at the regulator and said, lighten up.
Yeah, it's not the first time that we've spoken about something like that, Bruce. That's for sure. That at the end of the day, all this especially since no one is being injured or affected and the regulations aren't actually achieving anything, it's not going to stop people. It's just going to send them underground.
Yeah.
And people who really want to do that, they are still going to do that. And the funny thing is, well, don't post it on YouTube, but they're still doing it.
Yeah.
So if you're truly worried about safety, then whether it's on YouTube or not shouldn't be the issue. They're still doing it. You only seem to care if it's on YouTube. They're still going to do it.
They care because if you're doing it and people are seeing you're doing it and no one's getting hurt, calls the validity of the regulations into question. They don't want people seeing the fact you can do this stuff without killing people and babies and stuff, because it weakens their case. Every time someone puts a video up that is technically violating the rules, but which is completely safe, it makes it harder for them to justify the regulations. One of the best things I've ever had is when I think it was CAA, when I was talking to the investigators, I said, look, I've been doing this at that stage over 50 years, never hurt anyone, never damaged any property. So, what do you say to that? And the response was, you've just been lucky. And to which I said, you don't understand how risk is calculated, do you?
Yeah.
Probability is one of the two factors that produce the risk. And if you're going to discount probability as I've just been lucky, well, I'd rather have a pound of luck than an ounce of bloody, prevention.
That sounds like saying to a powered aircraft pilot, you've been flying for 20 years and you haven't died yet, but you've just been lucky.
Yeah. That's it.
Which is kind of crazy. It's fun. I find the whole thing absolutely retarded, because when it comes to full-scale aviation, I know of 4 people that I would consider friends that I know have died full-scale aviation. Now you look at that with what we're doing, and it's completely different. I think the issue is that all of these regulating bodies like CASA, FAA, CAA, all that sort of stuff, their pure existence has been grown up to maintain and regulate pilots. Now, pilots are a very different breed to hobbyists for remote control stuff. It's completely different. You want to learn to fly a powered aircraft, it's a serious business. You go to an aircraft club, and you learn to fly, and you get your registration, and everything is written down, and it's all very regimented. It's very military-esque, and that's what they're used to. And now they come along and they have this intrusive technology of drones and remote control things, which is now intruding on their area of governing, and they're freaking out because they don't know how to regulate it. In reality, they can't regulate it. So they either do two things. They either put their head in the sand and ignore it and hope it gets better, or they over-regulate it to a point where people ignore it anyway.
One of the big problems we've got here is the pilots, NZ ALPA, Pilots Union. They seem to have this agenda to vilify drones. And so they have all these press releases saying, that drones must be registered or they're going to bring down full-size aircraft without any possible connection between registration and safety. But of course, the media listens to them, and the CAA is being lobbied by NZ ALPA, by politicians, by the media. And I think they're making regulations simply so they can say, look, we've done something. It may be completely ineffective, but we've done something. Give us more biscuits and coffee. And that's the problem that we face, because we don't have this this unified voice. The community is so disparate, and everyone's pulling in different directions. It's like even the FAI or FIA, whatever it is, is a voice for the full-size aviation community, but we don't have anything like that. We just have little groups like 4 or 5 people flying a park, and even with model flying bodies, a lot of the people who fly mini quads don't operate within the framework of like MAAA or Model Flying New Zealand. So we're our own worst enemy, because we won't get ourselves together and say, hey, look, worldwide there are nearly 1 million of us, and this is what we think. We're not just 1 or 2 people, we're 1 million people cohesively. Then we'd have some lobbying power, but no one has got the time, energy, or inclination to actually organise something like that. And I don't have time to do it, or I would have done it.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of nerds.
People keep on talking about it, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon, and that's the unfortunate thing, because no one wants to work together. Everyone's too busy bitching about all this other stuff, and at the end of the day, you got these politicians that are going, okay, well, if Amazon wants something, we're going to give it to them. Why? Because they've got the political backing and the pull, and they've got the money to put down. So we're going to go with them because they can give us cash handbacks on the stuff where we don't. And we're a bit different to the rest of the modelling association, like the fixed wing club guys, because all they want is one field, one tiny little box of airspace, where what we want is the ability to go and fly wherever and do that safely, which we've already chosen to do that. But we can't be put into a little box like the fixed wing guys can.
Yeah, that's the thing that pisses me off too. Regulators are so damn lazy, they won't draw a distinction between the guy with his Phantom 4 that he just got from the local department store and he wants to see how high it'll fly, or he wants to get pictures of 747s landing at the international airport, and the responsible self-policing community, which is the mini-quad flyers and the traditional model aircraft flyers. Yeah. They won't draw a distinction. Everything that flies and remotely controlled is the same. If you don't identify your problem, you've got no chance of producing a workable solution. But regulators, just, it's too hard. Put it in the too hard basket. No, it's not good enough. We deserve better.
I just find it funny because every time I launch my remote control gliders, like my F3B and F3F style gliders on a winch, the launching procedure itself was already over the minimum height right there. And when we top out at probably about 3,000 feet. That's as far as we can see. And we're going up to 3,000 feet. We're doing that all the time. And you go to competitions and my Cass's response is, oh no, that's okay because they're certified to do that. Well, it's up there in their airspace. What fucking difference does it make?
That's the other thing. I went to CAA and said, look, since you reckon you got so much trouble with people flying too high and beyond visual line of sight and crap, why don't you designate a piece of airspace where people can do that and get it out of their system? Because we've all flown to the limits of altitude and it's boring as batshit because everyone looks like ants, and we've also flown beyond visual line of sight, and personally I much prefer close proximity flying, but everyone wants to see how far their drone will go, right? Give them a piece of land and a piece of airspace where they can do it, and they're there, so you can divert manned aircraft around it. Everybody's safe. And CAA's response was, no, we can't do that. No, we're not going to do that. I'm thinking, why not? That's one simple move that would go a long way towards maintaining safety, but you won't do it. Why not? It's like they're not open to suggestion.
Yeah. These guys they're all dinosaurs, and anything that's too hard basket. And we're a community, and we're a very passionate community, but we are a small community, and I think that we just, as far as they're concerned, aren't worth worrying about. So it's those bloody FPV guys making noise again. Yeah, well, we can ignore them. What we really care about is all those phantom guys who are going and endangering everyone. Well, how do we fix that? Oh, we better just ban drones entirely, make it so they can't fly. And back to the tea and biscuits, as you're saying. So
in a nutshell,
that's the reality of it. Yeah. Well, that's the reality of it. Meanwhile, we keep going and doing what we're doing safely and self-policing, and no children die and no babies die, and only a few fairies explode. And when Chad does punch outs, but
I've lost count of the number of fairies that I've killed.
Yeah, how many chips have died in the making of this live stream?
Well,
a lot.
It was funny because my freestyle flight for the drone nationals at New York, out there on the island, I was having big fights. I was having big fights with Scott behind the scene and all that sort of stuff, and I didn't even really want to be a part of it. So originally I had intended on going out there, putting the goggles on, do one flip, land, and then just walk off with all the TV cameras rolling, all that sort of stuff. And we did the whole practice thing, and it became a real social event. So all the pilots were there. Everyone was egging one another on, and it was really cool. And it's like, well, I'll fly because everyone's having a good time. So I didn't give a shit about winning. I just flew for me. But I was like, I didn't give a damn whether I won or whether I lost or whether I got kicked out or whatever. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to piss him off. So he's sitting there talking about airspace limit of 400 feet and be careful and sort of stuff. And I just went, you know what, screw it. And so I did a big punch out. And I got to probably about 1,000 feet.
399 feet.
11 was recorded.
I was getting 399 feet, and I thought, oh, that's high enough. And then the crowd started going wild, so I went, okay, well, I'll go further. And I kept on going, And that's when my Tyrannus was sitting there going, RSSI low, RSSI low. I thought, well, I'll just keep on going
It'll come
up.
back.
It'll fall back down.
Yeah, if it fails safe, it'll just fall back down again. And I kept on going up until the buildings in Manhattan I could see above them. And that's when I went, yeah, okay, I've gone far enough now. And then I just dove back down again. And that's during that of all the punch outs that I did, that was my most favorite one because it was basically a fuck you to Scott and the Drone Nationals and the FAA, and it's kind of like disqualify me. I don't fucking care. I'm not here. I'm not here to win. I'm just here to fly with my friends. And somehow I managed to win. But even more funny was one of the guys that knew me happened to be near Scott because Scott wasn't present. He was too busy massaging all the money backers at the time, and he wasn't there watching what happened. And he found out afterwards that I won the freestyle. And apparently he just lost his shit. He was not happy. He went over there space and he got really, really, really shitty. And like 20 minutes later, he was in front of me giving me the check, the winner's check, and congratulating me. And he was saying, oh no, he was really pissed off. So that was really satisfying. So that was the most fun punch out, as basically as a fuck you. Something so simple, just a simple punch out.
That's the great thing about not giving a shit. No one's got any control over you if you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Far too many times I've stopped giving a shit in this hobby, unfortunately. All right, let's have a look at the comments. Wow, have you guys stopped arguing about Trump already?
That was quick. They have. They touched on guns a while back, but they've stopped that as well.
Oh, okay.
They've actually been quite civil today. Somebody wants a chicken sandwich.
Well,
they all want the special YouTube channel, Tiny Whoop Hobbit Town. I like a tiny whooping Hobbit Town. I want to fly a proper mini quad in Hobbit Town. That would be awesome.
You realise there's nothing behind those doors in Hobbiton.
Yeah, I know. They're just doors into the hill. No, it's not true, Bruce.
It's just a movie. It's just a movie.
I actually really want to fly.
It's about $85 to get into Hobbiton.
Not with a mini quad, it's not.
No, true. And they are New Zealand dollars, so that's like about $2.50 Australian.
That's okay, yeah. I really want to fly in the location where they filmed, where they set Edoras. There's this mountaintop, and then there's gigantic plains all around it. And they built a hall up there, apparently, for the movie, which they had to dismantle afterwards, and the rest of the town was all CGI. But yeah, I would really love to fly there, although apparently it's like windy for 350 days out of 365 every year. So when you watch the movies, you can see them running around at Edoras, and everyone's hair's getting blown everywhere, and it was giving the cast.
Mine wasn't.
No. Well, were you in that movie? Did you do any extra work?
Did you not? Big grey beard, that was me.
He was Gandalf.
You
shall not pass.
Gandalf the White.
Alex Dalton said, Chad, do you tiny whoop? No, I don't. I got a tiny whoop once, and to be honest, I found it after you run into people's faces a couple of times and get caught in their hair and gone around a restaurant or two. I found it absolutely fucking boring. I mean, nothing against if other people enjoy it, great, but I just found it really boring. Same shit.
Myself a brushless tiny whoop, actually.
Yeah, pretty limited.
It's any good.
Drive my
brushless might be better. We'll see. $100 is my gamble that it's not as shitty as a real brushed tiny whoop. It's Brad's fault. Brad, if you're watching, it's your fault. Stop posting Banggood links in our private chats.
When am I going to reboot? Very soon. I'm just waiting on some crap. I ordered crap a week ago and it hasn't turned up. And also, I've had a cold for the last 3 weeks, and I thought I'm just getting over it. And then I got a sore throat again last night, and I got another cold back now. So, that's the trouble when you live in New Zealand. There's a lot of disease here, disease and poverty. Most of it. Yeah.
That's just the North Island.
Yeah, so it'll be the next couple of days anyway. I've got a new web. This is my crappy ass laptop, which is why I look so pale and poorly. But no, I've got I splashed out on a Logitech 922 webcam because I'm going to do a lot more live streaming and interactive stuff, hopefully. So I want to launch with a live stream, and as soon as I get that, we'll be away, rebooted.
I want to see every hair on your beard. You know, you need a good webcam. My one's full of hot pixels, and I think I look like there's glowing things in the air around me.
I'm going to get a rabbit tattooed on the top of my head, so from a distance it looks like a hare.
I have heard that one.
Yeah, it's pretty old. Just like me.
Bruce is the king of dad jokes.
Yeah, that's it. You should see me dance, man. Woo.
Okay, here's an interesting question.
Yep.
Scooter Vugu said, helical or patch?
I'm a helical man.
Can't answer that. Yeah.
The answer is crosshair.
Yeah. The answer is whatever the situation that you're flying in, which you didn't state, will suit what you're trying to do. They all have positives and negatives.
If you're flying proximity and you are using a linearly polarized patch, you'll have crap, because you'll actually pick up the reflections as strongly as the direct signal. You won't get benefit from circular polarization with a linear patch. So make sure if you've got a patch, it is a circularly polarized patch.
Yeah.
And if you get an AOMI patch, it doesn't matter because they don't work at all.
And what?
I genuinely say a lot of people fight and argue and talk about antennas too much, because the difference between them for regular use is when we're talking about like the name brand stuff, it's marginal at best. Like I watch these antenna comparison videos where people watch a 3-minute video, go, this one flickered 2 times less, so it must be better. It's kind of like, really? It's kind of like battery tests. Use what works for you in your situation. I'll show you what I use. So
Chad's summary is any antenna is better than no antenna.
That's right.
Exactly. So I've got like a Mad Mushroom. It's an old Mad Mushroom and an IRC patch on it. This is a circularly polarized patch. And one of the main reasons why I use that is because it generally works well in nearly all situations for me. Plus, what it means is I can put this in my transmitter bag and I don't have to take any of the antennas off.
Yeah, you just put it like down like that.
Yeah. I haven't removed my antennas from my goggles in about 1.5 years. And that's a big deal. But I fly proximity. I fly indoors, outdoors with this. And I've flown upwards of 5 kilometers away with this setup perfectly fine. So it may not be the best in some situations, but it's an overall good setup. But the main factor that I use it is because I don't need to take antennas off anymore. It's great.
I've got a 5.5 tune helical on my goggles. I've never taken that off either because I just drop mine straight into the pack. And so that works well. But the thing is, as Chad said, whatever works for you. I mean, get a setup that you're comfortable with and that works, and you're happy with the results. And then why would you change for the sake of changing? I'm going to do some project videos on making helicals and making patches so people can make their own and try them out. But yeah, it's tiny percentages of degree, but antennas are important in so much as you've seen these 1.5 watt FPV transmitters people have been reviewing and stuff. I mean, why would you throw so much power into an FPV setup? You know, it's like you're desensitizing your RC receiver, you're heating the environment for no real purpose, because every time you double your power, you only extend the range by 1.4 times. It's a law of diminishing returns. Use decent antennas and you'll get all the performance you want from a 200 milliwatt FPV transmitter if you're flying proximity, normal flying. I mean, I fly regularly with mine. I went the other day down and flew down a road. It's against the regulations, by the way, but the road was blocked off. And I think I got 2.5 kilometers with 200 milliwatts, and it was perfectly, fantastically, good reception. I don't need any more than that. Oh, look.
I'm going to go for a fly.
Are you whipping it?
Yeah, it's an elf actually, so it's not quite a whoop, but crash straight away. Wow. I'll show you my house.
Flips and rolls, come on.
Indoors. This thing can actually do flips and rolls, but I haven't flown this for ages. Oh. Oh.
Oh.
Ah. Ah.
You need better antennas. Turn your head round.
I can
just put a 1.2 watt VTX on it.
Get down the stairs. I'll show you my man cave. Ah! Oh no, my goggles are fogging up.
Haven't you got a fan?
I have to switch it on.
Oh, this is getting exciting.
Here's Man Cave 2.0. If you look closely, there's a Mavic. There's the plane in bits flying over that. That's my workbench. I shouldn't fly over the workbench itself because there's a million screws there and they'll go everywhere. There's the 9-inch.
Yeah.
And that couch is for sale if anyone wants to buy it. There's my electric bicycle with its illegal 2 kilowatt motor that does 57 kilometers an hour.
You outlaw.
Again, we're breaking the laws here. And outside looks like quite a nice day. And if I'd actually opened my door, I could have flown back in through the... Getting a bit sketchy out here. There's some sage. Everyone needs sage. Anyway, where to now?
Get in that boot.
In the boot. It's not open. Hang on, you wanted me to do a flip, didn't you? Let's see if I can do a flip.
We're getting about 3 frames a second.
Are you?
Right.
Right. I did a flip.
Someone said dive your toilet bowl.
Dive my toilet bowl. No. I'm coming back. Here's the toilet. Not getting dived.
Anti-clockwise southern hemisphere.
Yeah. Have a shower. Oh, look, there's you, Bruce.
Now that's you.
Hey.
See, as you can see, Bruce, we only we only show important factors of that are worth discussing here on my live feed.
It's highly, completely rehearsed. It's all staged.
I'm a little bit disappointed. No one's coming up with specific questions for Bruce. You've got to have some for him. Remember, Bruce is he's like the unicorn of the FPV community. You never get to speak to him directly.
And not Elon Musk's unicorn either. No.
There we go, Bruce. You could go and get a job with Elon Musk.
And make some Bruce Musk.
Interestingly enough, I've actually spoken with someone from SpaceX. They were interested in some technology I was working on. So
cool.
That was a few years ago.
Tell us about rockets and pulse jets and things. Some people might not know.
Oh yeah.
They're pretty cool. Yeah. Pretty cool. Good fun. Get you into trouble though, eh? You build a cruise missile. Oh, don't want to do that.
Cruise missile story. I don't know if everyone knows the cruise missile
I'd be locked up if I built one today.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Bruce had a bit of a history where he made RC planes with pulse jets on them. And they were pretty cool.
As a proof of concept, I built a cruise missile with a large pulse jet. And this is going back with I used my own design flight controller because this is before you could buy flight controllers off the shelf. I think the closest thing you could get was an infrared system that was made by FMS. I don't know if you remember that. It had infrared sensors and it was self-leveling. That was all you could get. And of course, infrared sensors on a pulse jet power plane are not going to work very well. So I had to design my own autopilot. And I tested it in a 90-sized glow-powered trainer. It went really well. I was actually surprised. This is back, what would it be? About 2000 or so. And I could get this plane to take off and land on a road, and it landed. Its horizontal deviation was from side to side was never more than 1 meter from the white line, and it could fly a flight path. I had waypoints and everything long before we had all this INAV crap and Pixhawk and stuff, and it was done with PIC microcontrollers, so there was only tiny amounts of memory to work with. It was actually a lot of fun. I've still got the original prototype.
Cool.
But it's classified.
I still remember back in the early UAV days, the American military was trying to make a UAV, and there were millions of dollars spending on it, and they couldn't get something to work well. And there was some hobbyist over in America. This is like, I think, early 2000s or something. Got himself just a trainer RC plane, put a dirty great big fuel tank in it, and got some like very early GPS GPS devices and basically hacked it all together and then flew across the mainland American continent, just using hobbyist components.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw it in the headlines this week. General Atomics are claiming they're going to do a world first by a transatlantic drone flight with their Sky Guardian, this great big bloody turbine-powered thing. It's world first, they reckon. But if you go back to 2003, Maynard Hill, who was one of the pioneers in the model flying hobby, he flew an aircraft across the Atlantic. It had an OS 4-stroke in it, and it was GPS guided. He did it in 2003, so that was the first. But now we've got 15 years later, we've got this huge bloody aerospace company claiming they're doing it first. Only 15 years after a hobbyist did it with bloody $50 worth of parts. It's crazy.
Yeah, sounds pretty normal.
Yeah.
Where are we? I'm trying to go through all these questions. People are starting to ask questions now.
Oh,
someone said, "What happened?"
Yeah,
what happened? What happened between me and Rotor Riot? We went in two different directions, and that when you go two different directions, you separate. That's how it works.
It's deep.
Yeah.
Atoms. Morris B is asleep, Dizzy. It's 5:30 a.m. in Europe.
Yeah.
I haven't heard much from Boris recently. I haven't seen he hasn't put any videos up or anything, has he? Has he sort of dropped out? Gone back to motocross?
Chicken sandwiched.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He's like a lot of the people who put a lot of effort into communities like this and get nothing back out of it. They go, I'm sick and tired of doing it.
Yeah.
It's you see it like all of those people that get into that aren't getting paid for it over time. They go, why am I doing this? Unfortunately, Boris is one of them, which is sad. XJet, if you could see a game of quad between two pilots freestyle, who would it be? I'd like to hear this answer. Probably, I don't care.
Yeah, it'd probably be my wife and someone else that couldn't fly. It's more fun when they can't fly. But it's interesting because I still think it's probably Chad and Steele, actually, because there's two wildly different flying styles. And I think if you've got people with similar flying styles, then you're going to see the same thing, slightly different versions. When you've got totally different flying styles, there'd be much more emphasis on the overall approach rather than the detail. There's this sort of they'd have different approaches to the same problem, so it'd be massively good fun to watch that.
Well, Steele would be simple. He'd be doing circles around himself, going "What up?" and swearing a lot. And I'd be flying slowly, looking at a tree, going, "Isn't that tree beautiful?"
Chad's got the beard. Steele's just got the moustache. I mean, the contest is won.
Now, it was actually kind of cool. When I was last over in LA, I caught up with Steele for the first time since we were over the Great Wall of China, just catching up, and we went up to the Angeles National Park, and went to the pine forest where we filmed stuff with Corridor Digital for the Star Wars, that big Star Wars film that they made. And that was cool. That was cool to go back there. It was quite funny because the people that we took with us, like Kevin and Noelle, and that they'd never been there, and they were like, "Oh, this is super exciting!" And Steele and I took off 1 or 2 flights, and we went, we're bored. But Kevin and Noelle were like, "Yeah," and they're flying around really hard. Every battle they crashed into because there's all ghost branches everywhere. So it's really interesting to see how different people react at different experience levels. So, like, I know you've seen it, Mark. Like you and I, we've done this for so long that we're like, like we've all seen it before. Where you get someone new in the group who hasn't done it before, and they're sort of going, "Oh, I just flew through a gap in a tree. It was amazing. It was the most amazing thing in my life." It all comes into perspective because like they've never done that before, so it's very new to them. But for someone who's been around, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm bored.
That's one of the beauties of this hobby is that when you get into it, when you start, it doesn't matter that you're really total crap at it. You have one FPV flight, you lift off and land successfully, and you're completely juiced with adrenaline, and you're just super excited just to do that. And so whatever skill level you are, you keep getting those moments. So it'll be the first time you fly acro. The first time I did flips and rolls, which was with a NASA and a 450 size quad that took 2 seconds to do a 360 flip, and you couldn't actually improve on the rates on that. I was absolutely juiced when I landed after that flight. It's like the first time I dared to go upside down, So that's the beauty of it. It's a hobby that just keeps giving and giving and giving. And as you get up through the levels, once you get the skill, then you can start really pushing yourself and still have those moments. I think flying in scary places and long range then becomes where you get your adrenaline fix later on down the track, or doing slightly naughty things. Not that any of us would know about that.
No.
That gives you a bit of adrenaline too. Flying somewhere you shouldn't fly.
Sand dunes and islands and shit, yeah.
Yeah, well, no. I've got a story I'll tell you afterwards, Bruce.
Maybe
yeah,
Opera House.
Yeah, that'd be great to fly there.
Did you do the filming in that Jackie Chan movie?
Was there a Jackie Chan movie at the Opera House and filming? I don't know.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
standing on the top and fighting that woman. I think it was Jackie Chan. I saw it the other night.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah, but you're right. It is an interesting. It always gives back, because sometimes when I'm feeling pretty crappy and things, I go out and have one flight, and it's you're buzzing again. It's great.
Yeah.
The only thing I miss is, because I live in a very small town, and most of the other people that fly here aren't interested in mini quads, is I tend to be flying on my own all the time. It was much greater when we had the other reserve before they health and safety people went nutty. We'd get people coming from a couple of hours away to fly there with us. But since coming to Tokyo, there's nowhere to fly except an airfield, which is boring as batshit. People don't come here anymore to fly mini quads, so I'm usually flying on my own. Of course, most people don't want to take the risk of flying and getting on the wrong side of the local council, but I don't give a damn. So I end up flying on my own a lot of the time. So it's because one of the nice things about long range also is flying with other people. Flying long range is fun because you go on a bit of a convoy and you have a bit of a sightseeing. Come over here, look at this, that sort of thing. The interaction.
Yeah.
You're 3 miles away, but you're talking to the guy right next to you. That's a lot of fun. We used to do that in the early days before it became illegal.
People are asking where Vec is. Vec's still flying. He's doing his thing. He's just probably realised that making money from this is probably hard, and a lot of his push was for the business that he's trying to do. It's like a lot of things. You can only put so much effort into something, and if you're not getting something back out of it, you're kind of like, what's the point?
Yeah. Hopefully we'll catch up with Lance in November. I'm going to go over to Frio for the Nationals just to make trouble.
Right.
I'm not going to compete.
The Carnival.
Yes, should be fun. And we can go over to Rottnest Island, where I believe they've recently banned all drones and fly our drones.
Yeah.
China's got
okay,
it right.
guys.
China's making their drones look like birds so you can fly them and nobody will know.
Oh, I like it. Ornithopters.
Yeah. Flips, rolls, and poos.
Well, I did like it. My experience over in China was great. They just didn't care. Do what you want.
Yeah.
I actually like the way China's pretty good with a lot of their regulations and rules and sort of stuff. It's just don't get on the wrong side of them because they will burn your shit.
Yeah. Don't scratch your corneas because they're really valuable when you're finished.
Yeah. So here's an example of how China works. So I had quite a few trips over to Shenzhen now to go spend time with Anthony and Greg over at the Fat Shark factory, and there's all these buildings that have like half built, not quite built to spec, and like it's all just the way that they build structures over there is kind of crazy, and you got all these buildings that just don't look right. There's this sort of like the Fat Shark building is, I don't know, it's like about 4 or 5 stories, and then next to it was this little tin shed, and then a big building right next to it. And I saw the tin shed the first time I went there. The second time I came there, the tin shed was gone, and it was all just a rubble. It was like partly burnt and knocked down. And I said to Craig, "What happened to that tin shed?" And he said, "Oh, that was a building where there was a guy who was storing cardboard in there. And the guy thought it was a really good idea that while he was storing cardboard that he'd do some welding in there. And, of course, the welding sparks came along and caught the cardboard on fire. And so he starts fighting the fire, and the fire brigade comes along and puts it out. And, like, part of the cardboard got burnt, but the building was all fine. And they put it all out, and I said, "Cool, well, why does it look like that?" And he said, "Well, see, the thing is that the government came along, saw this, gave him a talking to, and said, you should fucking know better than to do welding with around cardboard, you idiot. So as a way of punishing him, they came along with bulldozers, knocked the building down and said, fuck off and don't come back.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of like China. It's weird, but it works. You want to be a dick? Do what you want. But if you're a dick, you will kick you out. And they got all these scooters around the main part of the city as well. And Anthony told me that many years ago they had organized crime, and the way that they communicated and the way that they did business was with people on scooters. So all the guys that would carry all the drugs or whatever, the organized crime would be sort of run by the scooters, and they'd go around town. So the government then just said, okay, all scooters are now illegal. We have the power to confiscate and destroy your scooter on site. And literally within a week, apparently, it disabled all of organized crime because they couldn't do their business because they did it all with scooters. So in the center of the city, to this day, scooters are still illegal, but they allow them to be there. But if you're doing anything stupid or anything illegal, they can confiscate and destroy your scooter without any warning, without any reason. So anyone who's on a scooter is doing exactly what they're supposed to do, not doing anything shifty. So I kind of like the way that they do business over there. It kind of works in a really strange way.
Yeah, it's a different attitude, isn't it?
Wait, are people asking about Sharpoo?
Sharpoo's missing. He's actually under Chad's desk.
Well,
what's he doing under there?
But wait. Sharpoo and Bruce. Sharpoo is Bruce. Think about it. You've never seen Bruce and Sharpoo in the same room at the same time.
It's true. Holy shit.
I went over to Spain, and someone taught me. I think it's "Avez-vous Sharpoo" or something. Have you seen Sharpoo? How to say that in Spanish? So I was walking around the main street in the middle of peak hour, just walking up to random people, just shouting at the top of my voice, "Avez-vous Sharpoo?" I don't know what the hell they were saying back to me.
Probably get fucked, you stupid foreigner. We can't understand you.
So who was the one person that inspired you most to get into mini quads, Chad? Must have been something you saw or whatever.
Mark wants me to say him. Well, he's the reason why I got into it.
That was his gateway, yeah. Can't tell the story about...
It's like marijuana. It's just a gateway drug.
Yeah, I feel like marijuana.
I bought a flight test Batbone tricopter. That was my first one. And then I got another tricopter that was a bit of carbon and a bit of plastic, and that had a APM 2.5 on it. So I was testing like the return to home, which didn't work and all that sort of stuff. But at that time, I thought that I was the only person. This is back late 2013, early 2014. I thought I was the only person in Brisbane that was flying drones. So I didn't bother to reach out. And then I got on, I think it was RC Groups. There was FPV Australia. And I got on there and I said, hey, is there anyone in Brisbane that flies drones like me? I'd love to get in contact with you. And this guy called Strepto42 replies and says, there's a group of us that actually fly drones. But we're over on, what was it? The
Open Pilot. Still on the Open Pilot forum.
They're over on the Open Pilot forum. So sent me a link and I went over there and I put on there, hey guys, I've been sent over here by a friend. Is there any of you guys that fly in Brisbane? And this guy called Strepto42 replied and said, hey, yeah, we fly here. No one else replied. What I didn't realize at that point in time, people were stopping to use that forum and it was kind of getting dead. So I asked twice, and the only person that replied to me was this guy called Strepto42. And then out of the blue, he says, hey, mate, I'm going to be in a park tomorrow in Brisbane. Do you want to come? Because I had work the next day, and I went, yeah, sure. So I chucked a sickie at work, and I went to go and meet this guy in the park, and it happened to be Mark, and he showed me goggles for the very first time because I'd never flown FPV.
I've still got
and it was like, I was like, wow. And what I didn't realize was Mark was grooming me for a secret invite only forum. he was vetting me to make sure that I wasn't a CASA spy.
We were all still paranoid about the man back in those days. So we had a secret forum going that was like invite only. And the rule was if you wanted to join it, you actually had to be flying FPV stuff already. So, yeah, and we were like, someone has to meet you before you're allowed into the forum. And that someone normally happened to be me because I wasn't working at the time and had nothing better to do and I was flying a lot. So, yeah. So then I met this guy.
So he met up with...
He went on these rants about CASA and how he was flying gliders and, a few
CASA's
other things.
fucking useless. And...
Yeah. I'm like, I'm pretty sure this guy's not a spy. He seems pretty cool.
Yeah,
we should let him in.
and I was flipping my tricopter, which had a KK2 on it, above your friend's 3-year-old daughter.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that was actually probably that was more what endeared you to me than the CASA stuff, because A, I could see that you could fly, and B, that I could see that you were just the right amount of reckless to fit right in with the rest of us.
So before I knew it, I had an invite to this super secret FPV forum, and I go in there and I go, "Hi guys, I've been invited here by Mark," and then this guy called Strepto42 goes, "Hi, how you doing?" I'm like, "Oh crap, you're here again." But then there's all these other profiles of people who are saying like, "How you doing, Chad? How you doing, Chad?" And they were trying to organize a fly-in event. So they organized another fly-in event to another park, which I went to, and I turned up, and no one was there except for Mark. And that's when I started saying, "Okay, Mark, you got to be real with me here. Are you like the only person, and you've just got multiple profiles, and you're trying to pretend like you've got all these friends?" But I eventually met the rest of the guys, and it ended up being Sean from Impulse RC and Blackout. And Soma, who developed the Alien Blackout, all the guys that basically were the were all the original people of the whole FPV thing. So through pure accident, I managed to sort of hook up with the pretty much the grandfathers of the modern day FPV thing. And this group were pretty much the ones that, like, Blackout did the whole Blackout thing. Scotty did the hammer, and the Blackout got the whole thing quite well known around the world. And then Soma helped it, joined up with Sean and started up Impulse RC and developed the Alien. And that's where it all sort of snowballed from there. And it all came from this one group, which was kind of crazy. And we've all just been really good friends since.
Yeah, good times. The first time you flew FPV as well was when we went to Pete's house up on the Sunshine Coast. Yep.
And I came along and I had the linear whip antennas that come with the with the kit. So Sean let me borrow some of his IB Crazy antennas and said, "Just don't break them." I still remember that.
We were all still flying unprotected, cloverleaf type things, and because if you crashed, you'd bend all of those wires. My first one was terrible. By the time I retired it, I didn't realize that the center pin had to be connected to the lobes as well, and I wondered why I was getting really crappy reception for a couple of weeks until I discovered that it was actually physically broken.
Oh, look out. Will's online.
Oh, Willie.
Shouldn't you be? Oh, no, it's a Sunday. Well, no, you work 7 days a week. We'll get back to work.
Can you guys all open a few support tickets at Impulse RC? Will doesn't look like he has enough to do.
Yeah. Okay, so we have officially been talking for 2.5 hours now, which is kind of crazy. So
time flies.
I would suggest that if you've got any important questions to ask any of us, particularly Bruce, that you put them forward, and we'll talk for a little bit longer and then probably finish up, because otherwise we'll just continue on and we'll end up doing a 24-hour live feed, which I'm sure Bruce doesn't want to do.
You don't want to do it, Bruce. Trust me, you don't want to do it. Around hour 18, you start to feel real weird.
Hallucinations at the 36-hour mark I'm waiting for. Yeah.
So questions. Actually, a few people were asking earlier, Bruce, what you think FPV will look like in 5 years. So
Much the same as it does now, if we're still allowed to do it.
Yeah. So digital's not going to be the next big thing.
If we get some different spectrum, it could be. That's the problem. At the moment, we're cramped into 5.8 and 5G stuff. There's not enough space for us, really. The SD digital system I'm working on, which is only 640 by 480, so it's not 720p or anything like that. It shows great promise, but the problem is, as one person, all the good chips that I want are made in China for things like DVRs. You just cannot get the data sheets for them. You cannot get the information. And even if you can get the data sheets, there's a software development kit that you need to program them up. It's all in Chinese. There's no English versions of it. So I've been chasing around trying to find stuff. If you use the chips from the likes of Texas Instruments and other manufacturers, Maxim, they're all so expensive and so big that it's just difficult. That's why the HD systems we've seen to date have got massive, great transmitters and so forth, because they have to use those chips which are designed for other tasks, and you've got to use 3 or 4 of them, and it gets expensive and heavy and uses a lot of juice. But the route I went down, which is to use a DVR chip, because that's got your compressor and your codec in it. It's got your interface to your camera and everything. It's a really great route to go, but I would need more help or more assistance from someone in China who's able to do the translations or work with it. I might have a chat to RunCam, because I see they've got a little onboard DVR now. It's got a really good chip which we could use to do that. I might talk to RunCam and see if they're interested in perhaps collaborating on an SD digital system, with the goal mainly to allow more people on the band, and same with the 2.4 gigs. You can just turn on and spread spectrum. The interference is not going to knock anyone down, because at the moment with 5.8 at our field, it's a case of everyone's flying and someone turns on and says, anyone interfered with, it's too late.
Oh, sorry.
yeah. Well, what we want is something that's like like our spread spectrum gear, but for FPV. So you just turn on, and what happens is, if you get too many transmitters, everyone starts getting a bit of degradation, but it doesn't just knock someone out of the sky. Also, it means that when we go to, because at the moment power levels are really abysmal, 25 milliwatts in a lot of countries, because analog transmissions do not play well with digital transmissions. So when you go at digital, you can use higher power level without interfering with people. And in New Zealand, for example, on some bands, you're allowed I think it's 10 milliwatts analog, 6 watts digital, because the difference is that great. So if we do that, then we can use spectrum that is going to be wider, more people, more fun. Because at the moment, I know where we are, if you want to use legal channels, it's really hard to get more than half a dozen models in there at once. And the more the merrier. We've got these Chinese products coming out with 70 channels, but you're going right down to 5.3 gigs and up to, nearly 6 gigahertz. It's no wonder the FCC in America had a little spin out over that. And I see now that, do you see the press release they made, the notice, where they're going to be clamping down on anyone that sells the stuff and anyone who uses it? So it's going to make it hard for people in the USA to fly FPV.
I think you've hit the nail on the head regarding chip technology and so forth. I don't think people realize the amount of money it takes to develop chips specific for these roles. So the only reason why we have the flight controllers that we have is because companies like Apple and so forth had these gyros put in them in phones, because of economies of scale, because they could put the R&D. So we are using the technologies that they've developed. The only reason why we've got the 5.8 gigahertz frequency availability is because someone else has already done the chip development that we're using, and all of these VTXs for our analog are using the same essential chipset. It's the same thing. The reason why the Connex stuff costs so much is because Connex, the company that owns Connex, has the ability to develop and manufacture their own chips. So they had to go through the process of developing their own hardware, extremely expensive, and they needed to reimburse that. But also remember that what they did as a product is very expensive and sort of top line for consumer level, and people go, we want it smaller, we want it cheaper. Well, you'll get it cheaper by economies of scale, and you'll get it smaller by having them to pour a shitload more money into it, which they're not prepared to do because we're such a small a small market. And this is what I think people forget, where when it comes to developing stuff like that, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money. And us alone as a hobby is not a big enough reason for us to do it. We have to wait for someone else that can sell large economies of scale to warrant them to develop it and start manufacturing at a level where it's cheap enough. And then people like Connex and Remesian RC and people like Bruce can go out and then use those chips that come onto the market to suit our needs.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Look at Lightbridge. With DJI, I've got huge market. I mean, how many million drones have they sold? And they've got this Lightbridge product, which works well for what it's designed for, with quite high levels of latency. But it's working quite well in that area. Problem is, as you say, Chav, we're such the FPV community is such a small piece of the whole marketplace that no one's going to waste their time and money developing a chipset that they're never going to recover the costs from. So
a lot of DVR chipsets are old repurposed analog DVR type chipsets from like the 90s or early 2000s vintage, and we're actually using old silicon in a lot of those DVRs, which is why they're all kind of crappy and kind of drop frames, because they're not designed to cope with loss of sync pulses like we get all the time when we're flying. So that's why you get these dropped frames and things.
That's one of my biggest. Yeah, it's one of my biggest bitches. You can get yourself a 128 gigabyte micro SD card, right? So why are we using such low data rates on our DVRs? It's not like we're going to run out of space, It's that legacy technology, and that's one thing that I've always bitched about too. We've got these incredibly dangerous drones flying around, right? And we've got to take all these regulations and care. Well, why hasn't someone allocated us some specific piece of the radio spectrum solely for our use then, if they're so dangerous? Why are we using ISM bands where every man and his dog and fireworks display can use the same frequency and effectively knock us out of the sky? There's no consistency to the way regulators work. 1 minute we're the most dangerous thing on the planet. Next minute, oh no, just use an ISM band. Use 2.4. We don't care, It's crazy.
433. I can switch on my Easy UHF and none of the garage door openers work in the house anymore.
Well, even 868 and 900, they're pretty much the same. A lot of people don't realise, everyone's talking crossfire and long range stuff, and that's great if you're flying with one or two people. But the amount of bandwidth available on the 900 and 868 band and 433 is so much narrower that if you were in an average club environment with 10 or 12 people flying, you're going to have problems. There's just not enough room. You can't fit a quart into a pint pot. So I see everyone switching to Crossfire, and that's great if you're out flying with just one or two mates. But if it carries on like that, Crossfire is a fantastic system, and I can't knock it in any way. It really works well, but it does have limitations brought about by the laws of physics. So I still fly 2.4 because it does everything that I need. I've got the FreeSky R9 long-range system, which I'm testing out now, and I'll be comparing it with Crossfire because that's the thing that probably most people want to know about. And I'll be looking at it. But the big question is, do I need this? Now, if you're Chad and you've got the reactions of, nanoseconds of reactions, then the latency for a Crossfire system is probably, the reduction there. You can tell us, Chad, do you notice the reduction in latency with Crossfire?
He doesn't fly it. He's still on 2.4.
No, I've had a Crossfire system since 2016, and it actually ties in well here because one of them said, "Are you interested in using Crossfire or not much of a need?" Well, that's down to the individual. So if you want to fly long range, then that's one of the systems that you can choose from, and you need to assess which is going to work best for you. There's a lot of people, like you said, Bruce, everyone's going over Crossfire because 900 megahertz is the magic bullet. That's actually bullshit. If I'm flying in a city, I would prefer to fly 2.4 rather than 900 because 900, 868, whatever you're using, those bands, there's less bandwidth and they're actually even busier than 2.4 in some situations. And this is why some people have problems with Crossfire falling out of the sky in close range because, like you said, it's down to simple physics. So in the city, I would prefer to fly 2.4. Now, if I'm flying out in the country and I want to go and fly 5 kilometers away, well, of course, I'm going to go with a long range system because 2.4 can't do that. But I'm not going to fly long range because over 300 feet, that's illegal here in Australia anyway. So technically, there's no point in having a long range system here in Australia at all. So
we're very proud of you, Chad.
I love that hat. Go and put it on backwards and become Scottish again.
So if you've got an area where if you got an if you got an area like a built-up area and you want to do long-range stuff, a lot of the time 400 megahertz is probably better than 900 because that's actually a quieter band in the cities than 900 is. So I guess what I'm saying, it's like all these other things. There is no best. There is what suits what you're trying to achieve in the scenario you're trying to achieve in the area that you're trying to achieve, and that will change. Now, the one thing that Crossfire has is it has the lower latency. Now, yes, it's lower latency, and for me, I've tried both of them, and it's minor. It's not a big enough thing for me to go, yes, I've got to change over to that. It's not a selling point, and the fact that sometimes 900 in built-up areas can be worse, which I do a lot of flying in city parks and so forth. It's not a reason for me to change. So yes, I have it, but I don't really use it. Yeah, I mean, it's not out, but I've got one of the prototype Ghost systems that Immersion RC sent me to test. So if I do long-range stuff, I do it with that. I mean, it's not much of a muchness. Same, but different. Choose your poison. If you're a fanboy, be glad that you chose the best one and everyone else got it wrong. And crow to the world as loud as you want that you made the right choice because you know that you're right and they're wrong. So
and don't forget to argue with someone if they're wrong on the internet. It's very important.
Oh yeah. Tell them because your opinion matters.
And show them a cat video. A cute cat video is important as well.
Yes. Someone's obsessed with the like button.
Where are we? There we go. See, someone just said Crossfire is brutal in New York. I'm guessing you're saying you're having problems with New York. I've seen pine cones where we go to. There is some sort of like sewage plant under the ground.
The pumping station. We call them the shit stacks.
Yeah.
Sometimes the wind blows the wrong way and you can smell the shit stacks. They look like they're just a couple of...
Sure, that's not Canberra.
Yeah, no, that's more porcelain.
They have antennas. They have antennas which transmit stuff on the same frequency. And there's been a number of people that have gone there with Crossfire that have been fail-safing 20 meters away. So that's my favorite park to go to. So I'm not going to fly Crossfire in that park. I'm going to fly 2.4. Now this is where a lot of the TBS fanboys all get stuck into me because I'm an IRC fanboy and I hate TBS. And I'm just giving you the facts. So if you don't like it, right away, I own a Crossfire, okay? I've done my bit. I'm supporting Trappy. Yay. Where are we? And we're reading. We're still reading.
Yeah, they're not very questioning today.
No, they're not very questioning. Normally they want all these. I think they're getting sick and tired of me answering the question. Every question that they've got. Yeah, well, I think they're getting sick and tired of me answering the question saying there is no best. Choose what you want and be happy with it.
It could be a case of 2.5 to 3 hours is the sweet spot for live streaming attention spans as well. Bladders are filling.
Where are we? All right. I think you guys have had your chance to answer all of your questions, and so I'm gonna put Bruce up on the page. See, look, when we started the live stream, he had hair on the top of his head. So this is how much it taxes people.
Yeah, he looked like me.
He had hair and his
24-hour live stream.
Yeah.
He had hair on the top of his head and no beard.
No, my beard was brown. It was brown.
Reverb PDB. Someone asked. Yeah, it's close. It's very close.
PDB. Wait, it's right in front of me. It's right here.
There it is. Can you see that?
It's very close. It's very close. Yeah, it's. I wish I could tell you a date. I know pretty much the date. Be very patient. Sleep a couple of sleeps, and you might be happy. I probably got in trouble for saying something like that. It's extremely close. So you guys will be happy very, very soon. So Sean and the guys have been doing a lot of testing and R&D on it and a lot of changes, which they want to bring out a good product, and that's why it's taken so long. So very, very soon, guys. And you guys that like to use that stuff, I know you'll be pretty happy with how it works.
It's been worth the wait. It's a good bit of technology.
Put it this way, I don't use OSDs. I don't like OSDs, and I'm now installing these in all of my quads because I see a use for them, not because of the OSD side of thing. That can be helpful at times, particularly long range, but I'm putting it in there for the other things that it can do, which are really, really handy to have. Yeah, if someone who says they don't like OSDs is saying, I'll put this in here, that's pretty good. But hey, I've sold out long ago, so don't listen to what I say.
Yeah, you're just an Impulse RC spy boy, fan, cash for comments guy. Remember, you know, just like FPV Queensland is owned by Impulse RC.
Hey, Chad, when you come to New Zealand, I'll let you fly my blackout mini quad on 35 megahertz with the 1806 motors and the Naze 32 with base flight. See how you get on.
Well, that'll be beautiful.
hold that thought.
I've still got a couple of quads that have base flight installed on them. It's funny, actually. I was just going through old videos last night, and I dug one up, and it must have been from
Here you go, Bruce.
The days of those.
There you go.
I've got one with the 6-inch props too, the longer arms.
Oh yeah, nice. Fearless arms, the metal Danny arms. Now, most of this video was spent looking at the ground because we had no camera tilt at all.
That's right.
And the GoPro was mounted flat on the front of the thing, so I'm just going rah, and you sort of like stop and look up every now and then rah, again.
You never know what you're going to hit until you've already hit it, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that were the tight days. And those were the days of the Simon K blue ESCs with Simon K on them, and you'd be flying along, and all of a sudden you'd just fall out of the sky because you'd lose sync on a motor.
Because they weren't designed for mini-quads and 4S.
This is 1806 with Simon K Blue Series ESCs, an Ace 32 Rev 5 with an early version of base flight running on it.
Top spec.
I'm going to put a D4R2, so PPM, on there instead of S bus. A PZ0402 camera with a 2.8mm lens, 0 degrees worth of tilt. But I'm also going to set it up without any throttle cut. And of course, because it's base flight, it doesn't have air mode or anything like that. So when you go below 20% throttle, the props not only lose the stability, but the props stop, so you lose everything. And what I really want to do with this, I'm also GemFan 5030 props, a 3-cell nanotech battery on there.
Yep.
What I want to do is I want to take this to like a big multi-GP race over in America. So you got all these new hotshot kids that have only been in it for about a year. I want to give this to them and say, okay, do one lap around the track because this is what we first rate on.
Look what I've got. This is a unicorn.
Oh,
Who knows what this is? This is a one-of-a-kind prototype that Scotty built me. It's got a clean section and a dirty section with blackout
lines,
which are way too stiff. It's got a Naze 32 V1 Pro, crappy GPS on the top, and look at that camera tilt.
Speed, built for speed.
Yeah, and this was the Go Mini. It was the first mini quad specifically designed to carry a GoPro, and I can see the Blue Series 4 amp, 12 amps still in there. Sunny skies. It's got a buzzer.
2204s.
2204, 2300 kV. I had the blackout 3S 1806 motors or whatever they were as well. I was the first rich guy in the group to buy those. Looks like there's a Polulu regulator in there. Oh, that was probably for the VTX or something.
If you want some more GemFan props, I've got boxes of them.
Oh, good. I actually need some GemFan props for what I want to do. So
I'll give you a suitcase full of them.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Some of them have still got my flavor.
Does that mean that you're sponsoring me?
Yeah, you'd be sponsored by me.
sponsored by XJet.
Yeah,
Bruce Flight. Well, we talked about Bruce Flight the other day in the chat, didn't we? I'm actually going to make a build of Beta Flight and just do a global search and replace with the word Beta for the word Bruce and see if it still builds, and then just post it up. Because I can build Beta Flight now.
I've just realized, Bruce, if I come over to New Zealand, then you'll be able to have the honor of being able to fly an actual Final Glide Oz quad, because me being mode 1, no one else gets to fly my quads. The only other people that have flown my quads at all have been BMS Thomas and Noelle and Kevin, so Onigiri. They're the only ones that I fly with, that I've ever flown with, that fly mode 1 that can fly it. So you'll be only the fourth person ever.
Yeah, most people aren't clever enough to fly mode 1, are they? Eh?
No.
They don't have the skills.
Well, what really freaks people out is when I fly mode 1 and then I pick up a mode 2 transmitter and fly that as well.
I can do that with fixed wing, but I've tried it with multi-rotors and it always ends in tragedy.
Well, I can fly mode 2, but I think the way that I can do that is mode 2 I pinch, and mode 1 I use my thumbs.
If you pinch, it configures your mind. You got to think before you use an input. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like pinching. Yeah. It took me a while to convert over, but it took me about 30 packs, but I made myself change, and it improved my flying. It changed my flying as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, but I look at Thomas, he's a thumber, and look how he flies, man.
Look, have you seen his thumb, though? He's got divots in his thumb. It actually aligns in the same holes in his thumb every time he puts. And like Paul's like, what happens if your stick rotates or something? And we're like, oh, I don't know. I guess you'd be screwed. So if you want to hobble Thomas at the next race, just get his radio and turn the stick about 5 degrees.
Yeah. I remember when I could fly as good as Thomas.
Well,
either I've got a lot worse or he's got a lot better, eh?
I remember when I flew better than a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, this is going for the mode 2, mode 1 argument. When you combine my competition wins with Thomas's competition wins, you'll notice that mode 1 has been the most successful mode for mini quad competitions ever. So take that, mode 2 guys, and mode 3 guys. Like you're just really fucking weird. No one wants to leave the room.
Go and stand over there with the mode 4 guys.
Actually, I'm surprisingly I'm mode agnostic. I think it just depends on what suits you. Because I know Ron at the club here changed modes. It cost him about 4 models. But I mean, I figured I was brought up on mode 1. If I was starting again, I'd go mode 2. But I'm not going to waste models by trying to change modes.
Yeah. I love it. Mode agnostic. I like that. Yeah. I started flying mode 2 purely because I was flying so much, and what I was doing with Rotor Riot and doing everyone else was flying mode 2. It just became a bit of a pain being the odd one out. It was really hard to deal with, and I'm sure you have a similar thing that you have to deal with, Bruce. But it just got to a point where I'm just like, you know what? I don't fucking care.
Yeah, I started flying mode 2 because it was like a helicopter, and I hadn't come from fixed wing. So I think if you've come from fixed wing, you tend to be mode 1, and if you come from helis or
I've heard that argument. You know, people say, "Oh, it's just like the joystick in an airplane," but you don't fly the joystick with your thumb on the top of it, or even pinching. Hold it with your hand. And the only reason I'm mode 1 is because I don't know about you, Chad, but mode 1 was popular around these places because we could only afford the little 2 Futaba transmitters with 2 single-axis sticks. That was okay. Yeah. You're a roll on one side and pitch on the other, and so you got into that. And then when you could afford dual-axis sticks, well, you're already in the groove, so that's where you stayed.
I want to build a chair one day which has the proper
my first radio was a Sanwa 2-channel AM, which was the same. It was a fixed roll and pitch, and you just couldn't get away from it.
I must admit, for 3D flying, it's actually I kind of prefer. If I was only going to fly 3D, I'd stick with mode 1 because when you want to do nice slow rolls, you're just steering the left hand stick like you're stirring a cup of coffee, just to keep the roll of the rudder and the elevator in. It's so easy to do really great rolls with mode 1.
Yeah, I think that's the whole mode debate. Which one's better? It all comes down to what maneuvers you're doing. There's some maneuvers that favor mode 2, and some maneuvers that favor mode 1, and there's no one that is king. It's personal preference, and I mean there's been world champions in 3D helis with mode 1 and mode 2, and all these other aerobatic stuff. So it's down to personal preference, but people will argue about it just like the different ESCs, which one is best.
Yeah, the which ones are best.
Yeah, they are the best. They always
have a brand called which is best.
Brand. Oh, nice. I like it.
Righty-ho. You guys are all getting nice and quiet in the comments there. But we're still managed to hold around about 110, 120 viewers for the entire time. So that's been kind of impressive. That's basically saying to me that I need to bring Bruce in just for those extra views. I mean, that's 3 cents extra I'm going to get on my live stream. So
should I better play some music so you can't monetize?
Screw you, buddy.
What's copyright?
Well,
play a Prince song.
Oh, that's badly out of tune. Oh, that's awful.
Okay.
What is 90% pilot, 10% aircraft? Same with guitars, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it helps if you tune.
Okay. While Mark is trying to get me demonetized like he normally tries to do, I will have to say I think we should leave it here. And thanks for everyone for tuning in and keeping us company, and with all those comments showing that you're actually half interested in what we're saying. But even if you weren't interested in what we're saying, stiff shit, we're going to say it anyway. But thanks for being interested. It's a nice little bonus. It's not required, but it's a nice bonus. And of course, thanks to Mark as well for wasting his afternoon.
Yeah, I only do it for the subs, and I'm amazed that I managed to get a word in edgewise with the two of you. But it's actually been quite civil. I think we should do these Southern Hemisphere live streams more often.
Yeah,
we should get Southern Hemisphere only. Get Chili Well in here next time.
And of course, oh wait, I've got you. There we go. That's better. And of course, finally, a big thanks to Mr. XJet, RC Model Reviews, criminal extraordinaire, Bruce Simpson. Thanks very much for coming on, my friend. I totally appreciate it. We've been trying to get you on here for a while, and it's good that we can finally hook you up and so forth. So I don't know what.
Mate.
You have to come on one of my streams as well, and we have to collaborate. Yeah,
we're going to come over. We're going to come over and fly sooner or later.
Yeah,
I
shall alert the authorities.
Yes.
Look out, boys! They're coming.
Don't worry about me. You got bigger problems coming from Aussie.
Well, I will admit, like my last trip was in 2011. I went to the South Island, and I found it quite funny going through customs. Getting in was easier than leaving. So when I went in, they were like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, "Yeah, no worries. What are you here for? Just on a holiday." "Okay, cool. Have fun." Then when I left, they're like, "What? You're leaving already? Why are you going?" Because they didn't want you to leave. But yeah, we'll have to talk more, Bruce, about a trip over there. And if you're keen at some point in time, we'll have to do some more live feeds. It's good having you on here and chatting. It's good to get your face out in these kinds of more public scenes. I think that needs to be done because you're a well-loved figurehead in this community, and it's good to get you out there. So if you'd love to come on more live feeds, I'd love to have you on there. Plus, I'd love to go on some of yours and so forth. So I'm sure we can work out some more from there.
Sounds awesome. Like a plan, man.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool, guys. Thanks very much for hanging around, and we will get out of here until the next time that I decide we're going to do a live feed and get on the ranty chair. We'll leave you for now. So thanks, guys, and ciao.
Ciao. Rock on.